Chapter 2091. This was an extremely vast and luxurious office. There was a chandelier that was bigger than a bed hanging from the ceiling. The floor was covered with a bright red carpet. The surrounding walls were hung with gorgeous hanging curtains. However, there was no wall on the side facing the door. Instead, there was a side of tempered glass that could directly see the scenery outside the building. Therefore, the lighting in this office was very good, allowing the warm sunlight to project into the interior, bringing a warm feeling. Of course, there was furniture in the office. There was a sofa and table cabinet sitting on the side. There was a bookshelf close to the wall. There were carts for brewing tea. Of course, there was also a luxurious desk. However, in this office, the most conspicuous thing was not the furniture, nor the huge glass wall and gorgeous chandelier decoration that replaced the wall, but a plaque hanging on the left wall. On the plaque there were such words: Fairy Tale, a guild name that was more resounding than anything else in this world. At this moment, the guild's acting president was sitting at the luxurious desk, wearing glasses on her face, flipping through a document. She was a young girl in her prime. She should be around 20 years old. She had a head of beautiful black waist-length hair. She was wearing a standard office lady's formal dress that only a strong woman would wear. Her thighs that were exposed outside the skirt were covered with black stockings, and her feet were wearing high heels. She was very charming. It was believed that no matter who it was, if any man saw such a young girl who was obviously in a high position and was very charming, they would more or less have some feelings of being moved. However, if one looked carefully, they would find that this acting president was not just a strong woman with appearance and working ability, but no strength to truss a chicken. That was because a sheathed long saber was leaning against the wall beside him. The young girl had been working seriously like this, flipping through the documents on the desk one after another, and her spirit was quite concentrated. Under such circumstances, the entire office was filled with an atmosphere of silence, without the slightest sound. Katja? After an unknown amount of time, the sound of the door opening could be heard. Then, another young girl walked in from outside the door. The newcomer was not as charming as the former. It was not that this young girl was not good-looking, but the young girl's age had not reached the mature charm of the former. Her figure was petite and tender. Judging from her appearance, she should be a young girl less than 14 years old. However, this young girl who was not even 14 years old had a calmness and intelligence that a normal child should not have. She gave people a feeling that she could not be underestimated. The young lady, who was carrying a pile of documents, had just entered the office when she saw the acting president sitting there, concentrating on flipping through the documents. She immediately let out a soft sigh. "Miss Mugging, have you not rested yet?" Hearing someone call her, the acting leader of a guild called Fairy Tale, Celestial Child finally raised her head from the documents in her hands, revealing an incomparably exquisite face. Looking at the petite girl who walked into the office, she faintly smiled. "You're here, Xiaoshi." "Yes, I'm here, but I'm here according to the normal working hours," Xiaoshi said coldly. "As for Miss Mugging, if I'm not wrong, you've been in the office since yesterday and didn't go back to rest at all, right?" "It can't be helped." Mugging took off her glasses, rubbed her eyebrows and said, "There have been too many things targeting us recently. If we don't grasp more information about the countries around the world now, when we confront them, we will definitely be suppressed." What Mugging had been reading since yesterday was not an ordinary document, but the latest information from all over the world that had recently been collected. Xiaoshi seemed to understand Mugging's thoughts and frowned slightly. "The countries around the world still haven't given up on their complaints against us? It's not that easy." Mugging smiled coldly. "After all, we have all the initiators in the world, and even all the cursed children in the world. Children infected with the protozoan virus, cursed from birth, and possessed power beyond that of humans. That was the cursed child." The so-called initiators referred to the cursed child who formed a partnership with a human as a facilitator, became a police officer, and was responsible for the work related to the protozoan virus. Someone said that they were the last hope of the world. However, the treatment that these children suffered in this world was worse than that of dogs. After all, the source of power that gave these children power was the same blood as the protozoan virus that threatened the survival of humans. Therefore, people regarded these children as monsters. Therefore, people unilaterally hated these children. This kind of discrimination and hatred had not been erased until now. However, the fate of the cursed children was no longer as miserable as before. If there was a reason, there was only one reason. That was Fairy Tale. A shelter called Monsters by the World, providing a place for the cursed children, had now become a civil organization that could not be ignored by the major countries in the world. After 3 years of development, our guild has taken in almost all the cursed children in the world, including the children who formed a police team 3 years ago and became the initiators. Mugging looked up lightly, her eyes flashing with sarcasm. However, it is precisely because of this that the countries in the world have lost most of their power to fight against the protozoan virus. Now they have completely fallen into a state of panic, and it is natural that they would accuse us. Therefore, since a year ago, countries in the world have begun to claim that we have illegally entered their country and taken away their citizens from their borders. Some countries have also claimed that we have stolen weapons against the protozoan virus from their countries. Xiaoshur's tone also became a little cold. To them, the cursed child is just a weapon against the protozoan virus. Moreover, it is a weapon that they can ruin however they want. Muging's tone was filled with extreme disgust. How ugly. However, not all countries are like this, Xiaoshur said. Although some countries led by the United States have been accusing us, the big countries in the East have chosen to be neutral in a wait-and-see manner. The Tokyo region is directly on the same front as us and has been supporting our approach. However, no matter which country it is, our evaluation is not very good. Mugging sighed. In the eyes of many people, we are just an insidious force that wants to rely on monopolizing the cursed child to achieve the purpose of controlling countries in the world. After 3 years of development, today's Fairy Tale had almost all the cursed children in the world. In other words, it was the only force that could compete with the protozoan virus and carry out police missions. Adhering to the obligations of a non-governmental organization, Fairy Tale now faced the world and accepted commissions from all over the world. To put it bluntly, the reason why countries in the world could still exist today was because of Fairy Tale. If we don't accept a commission from a country, then the country will almost certainly perish. As a result, some countries that don't want to see their survival in the hands of others naturally make a fuss. Mugging picked up a document on the table and said, "Most of the recent intelligence reports have mentioned this. The rulers of various countries all hope to regain control of the cursed child's power, and have already started to take action. I'm afraid that before long, all the countries in the world will join forces to attack us, right?" Attack? Xiaoshur was a little incredulous. In other words, the countries in the world will unite and wage war against us? It is possible, but I will not let them succeed. Mugging stood up from his seat and walked to the glass wall. He looked at the bustling street outside and spoke resolutely. "The guild that Noah entrusted to me, no matter what, I will protect it." Xiaoshur nodded his head heavily. Chapter 2092. The current Fairy Tale was no longer the same as it used to be. 3 years ago, after Mugging took over the position of guild leader, he had been laying the foundation for the development of Fairy Tale with Xiaoshur's help. First, Mugging quietly cast a large amount of holmium into a huge stone tablet, creating a city that belonged exclusively to Fairy Tale. He then moved the entire Fairy Tale over to it. Immediately after, Mugging announced to the world that Fairy Tale had developed a medicine that could completely reverse the activation of the Archilon virus, preventing the cursed children from being infected by the Archilon virus, and finally turning into Archilon. This news shocked all the countries in the world. In this way, the cursed children who did not want to become primitive animals would naturally try their best to enter the Fairy Tale and join the Fairy Tale. Moreover, Fairy Tale would send out a large number of tour groups every year to bring the cursed children from all over the world to Fairy Tale. The cursed children were regarded as monsters in all the countries in the world. In the beginning, no one cared about the loss of the cursed children, allowing Fairy Tale to successfully take in many cursed children. Gradually, when the cursed children from all over the world had gathered in Fairy Tale, each country began to realize that they had lost a large portion of their cursed children, which was equivalent to losing a large amount of power to fight against the Archilon. When they were surprised again, there were not many cursed children left in their countries. It was only at this time that the major countries finally began to panic and gather the cursed children in their countries, greatly reducing the number of cursed children that flowed into Fairy Tale. However, even so, there would still be many cursed children who would go to fairy tale with the help of tour groups and under various circumstances. Over time, located not far from the Tokyo area, the city that belonged to fairy tale finally developed into a bustling city. The people who lived here were either humans who did not reject the cursed children, or they were cursed children. If it continued to develop like this, sooner or later, the cursed children would completely integrate into the human race and no longer be regarded as monsters, right? Therefore, as the beginning of a new era, and the city where the headquarters of fairy tale was located, many people called it Fairyland. Note, Avalon, where Arthur the Night King of Great Britain rested, was also called Fairyland. It also had the meaning of fairyland. However, as Mugging said, many people did not like the existence of fairyland. That was not only because many people rejected the cursed child, but also because the cursed child here would choose to join the fairy tale and strengthen the power of the fairy tale. With almost all the cursed children in the world, the current fairy tale was fully capable of conquering the world, and could even use the fact that the major countries were threatened by the primitive animals as a condition to firmly control the major countries by providing help. To put it bluntly, the current fairy tale had the ability to become the world's overlord. Of course, this would cause the rulers of the world to feel a sense of crisis. Those countries who did not want to see their countries threatened by others, and wanted to firmly hold power in their own hands, naturally saw fairyland as a thorn in their side. If it wasn't for the fact that they were afraid of the power of the fairy tale, the surrounding countries would have already attacked them. Knowing that they were unable to fight against the fairy tale with their own strength, the various countries only had one choice under such circumstances. That was to join forces, with the power of all the countries in the world, wage war against fairyland, and finally bring the cursed children back under control. That was the wishful thinking of the rulers of many countries. Coupled with the fact that various countries were creating public opinion and spreading rumors that fairy tale intended to monopolize the cursed children to gain control of the major countries, fairyland was now at the cusp of the world storm. Mugging, who had sharply sensed the recent movements of various countries in the world that had led the situation to the direction of war, worked through the night to gather information from various countries and prepare. Therefore, as the residents of fairyland began their daily lives, the border where the giant stone monument stood was heavily guarded to a frightening degree. At least, Noah had just arrived at the city gates when he immediately sensed the tense atmosphere in the air. Does this count as me coming back at the right time? As he said that, Noah stood outside the city gates of fairyland and looked up at the city before him. At first glance, rather than calling it a city, it would be better to call it a fortress. That was because in this city, apart from the towering black giant stone monuments at the border, each of the giant stone monuments were connected together with steel walls, firmly protecting fairyland within. If you look at it this way, this place is a little similar to the maze city of Eulalia. Even as he said that, Noah found patrolling personnel on the city walls and the giant stone monuments. Of course, those people were not soldiers but police officers belonging to fairy tale. Among them, there were promoters of humanity, and initiators of combat forces. Pairs of police officers were all wearing standard uniforms, and like the National Defense Forces, they were heavily guarded. Although I don't know what happened, but if I just go in like this, they won't let me in so easily, right? Noah fell into deep thought. Finally, in order to avoid trouble, he made a decision. Let's just sneak in. With that, Noah leaped and his figure rushed straight into the clouds, and then turned into a blur, and swept into fairyland. Cars came and went. People flowed continuously. Skyscrapers were everywhere. Roads extended in all directions. The bustling scene, no matter how one looked at it, looked like a bustling city. Noah walked on the crowded street, but his eyes were always looking around. Come on, come chase me. Don't run. On the sidewalk, a group of children were smiling innocently, happily running past Noah. Noah could clearly see that the pupils of the children were as red as blood. Without a doubt, those children were the cursed children. However, these children were beaming with smiles of their age, laughing from the bottom of their hearts as they chased after each other. On the side, the pedestrians seemed to have gotten used to this scene, and continued with their own business. At the position of the red street lamps, some kind-looking old people were even laughing and chatting with a group of cursed children. The cursed children, who were hated by most people, blended into the city as if it was a matter of course. Even if they displayed superhuman abilities from time to time, it did not cause any panic. Looking at this scene, Noah could not help but recall what happened when he first came to this world. At that time, Noah also encountered a cursed child running on the street. However, at that time the cursed child was like a rat crossing the street, being chased by a group of adults with faces full of hatred and ugliness. Noah would never forget the way the child looked at him at that time. She was afraid that Noah would harm her. Her eyes were filled with fear. It was because of that incident that Noah finally made the decision to protect the cursed child. Recalling the incident at that time, and looking at the scene before him, Noah could not help but smile. Chapter 2093. At this moment there was only one thought in Noah's mind. That was, his previous efforts had not been in vain. Although Noah had only created Fairy Tale and laid the foundation of Fairy Tale, and left the development to Mugging and the others without Noah, the utopia in front of him would not have appeared. Looks like my decision to return to this world was right. Noah, who muttered, could not help but recall what had happened after he left the Maze City Our Alley and returned to Between Worlds. What? In the pure white world, Noah looked at Gaia and Alea in shock. There is only one world left to go to? Yes. There was only one world left to go to. Just now, after Noah returned to Between Worlds, Gaia and Alea announced this news to Noah. Why? Noah asked out of reflex. Why is there only one world left to go to? It was natural for Noah to be so anxious. This was because Noah still had a few worlds that he had not returned to. If possible, Noah also wanted to return to those worlds to see the friends he had made before the final battle. However, Gaia and Alea suddenly said that there was only one world left for him to go to. How could Noah not be anxious? Gaia and Alea could do nothing about this. It's not that we don't want you to continue to relax, little Noah, Gaia sighed. It's just that there isn't enough time. Not enough time. Noah froze. Looking at the stunned Noah, Alea pointed in a direction. Look there. Hearing this, Noah looked in the direction Alea was pointing and cast his gaze over. In the next moment Noah saw it. There was a stone plate suspended in midair. Its outline was connected to 10 patterns, with a sun carved in the center. The sacred text surrounding the stone plate was no longer like before, absorbing the white mist called imaginative power. Its color was also completely different from before. Whether it was the stone plate that represented authority, the sun that represented sovereignty, or the sacred words that represented grace, they had all transformed into the purest white color. Seeing this, Noah's heart skipped a beat, and he spoke with uncertainty. Could it be? Under Noah's probing question, Gaia and Alea both nodded. Thus Noah understood. His authority, sovereignty, and favor had all been sublimated. As long as they returned to his body, all the possibilities in his body would be opened up, and he would have invincible power that could rival the world. Next, we just have to wait for the imaginative power to completely fuse with the energy, and it will be complete. Alea looked at Noah. Because Between Worlds doesn't have the concept of time, we can't be sure how long this fusion will take. But, according to our estimation, when you return from the next world, it will be almost done. Gaia also looked at Noah and raised a finger. The barrier against shadow is almost at its limit, so little Noah, you can only go to the next world, and then you will have to complete your mission. Noah was silent, and his emotions were complicated. Has this moment finally arrived? Wang. Not knowing if it was because they sensed Noah's complicated emotions, the surrounding feathers that represented the world itself began to tremble. Like little birds, they gathered around Noah and fluttered as if they were comforting Noah. Seeing this, Noah's emotions gradually calmed down. Who? Taking a deep breath, Noah met Gaia's and Alea's gaze and nodded heavily. I understand. Gaia smiled at Noah. Although Alea was still as expressionless as before, she also gave Noah an encouraging look. The two restrained themselves as if to not disturb Noah, silently retreated. Under such circumstances, Noah turned his gaze to the surrounding feathers. Next, Noah could only go to the next world. When he came back, Noah had to put an end to everything. If he succeeded in surviving, then Noah would naturally have the opportunity to return to the worlds he had been to before, and even continue to travel in the worlds he had never been to before. But if he failed, then the next world would be the last place where Noah could leave his memories. Then which world should Noah choose? The worlds that Noah had been to before. He had already returned to most of them. The only ones left were Black Bullet, Absolute Dual Blades, Night of the Magicians, and Undead King. Then, of these 4 worlds, which one did Noah want to go to the most? Thinking of this, Noah almost immediately made a decision. In the end, the world that Noah chose was this world. Black Bullet. After all, that world is the one that I am most worried about. In this world, there was the child that Noah had risked his life to protect. In this world, there was the evil that Noah had risked everything to fight against. And in this world, there was the person that Noah had made a lifelong promise to. Gaia had said that Noah should not have any regrets. If Noah had any unfinished business in the remaining worlds, then he had to quickly finish it. This way, Noah would naturally think of the Black Bullet world. After all, in the Absolute Dual Blades, Night of the Magicians, and Undead King worlds, Noah had nothing else to do other than to see those familiar faces. In the remaining worlds, there was only the Black Bullet world. In that world, Noah still had things to do. Thinking back to that pure white and holy figure, Noah muttered, 3 years. In the beginning, when Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven made an agreement, the time limit was 3 years. When choosing to enter a world, if there was a world fragment in that world, then the world would automatically send Noah to the timeline of the world fragment. But if there was no world fragment, then Noah could freely choose the time to enter. Of course, for a world that Noah had been to once, when he entered again, a month would have passed no matter what. As long as it was not within a month after Noah left this world, then Noah could freely choose the time to enter. If that's the case, Noah pointed at a feather. Then this time I will choose to enter the timeline 3 years later. Thinking back to the decision at that time, Noah really felt that he did the right thing. Otherwise, Noah would not have been able to see the city in front of him that had realized his original idea. Fairyland, huh? Noah, who had a general understanding of the city's situation from the conversations of the passers-by, could not help but smile again. Quite a good name. With that, Noah continued to walk forward. At this time, Noah noticed some commotion on the street. A group of pedestrians gathered in front of a building, discussing animatedly while looking at a huge screen on the front of the building. On the screen there was a live broadcast. It was a live broadcast of a press conference. Noah raised his head, looked at the screen, and then raised an eyebrow. Because the person being interviewed in front of the screen was Noah's acquaintance. Is that mugging? On the screen, the person being interviewed was mugging. Compared to 3 years ago, mugging had lost all of her childishness. She was no longer wearing the high school uniform of a female high school student like before. Instead, she was wearing the formal office wear of a strong woman. However, her figure was better than before. I wonder what kind of expression this girl will have when she sees me. Noah, who could not help but chuckle, immediately lifted his feet and walked forward. But just as Noah was about to find someone to inquire about the location of the Fairy Tale Guild headquarters, in the live broadcast, a reporter suddenly asked such a question. President Tiantong, it is said that Fairy Tale plans to control the world by monopolizing the cursed children, or even rule the world. May I ask if this is true? Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. Chapter 2094. Rule the world. Noah frowned slightly, stopped in his tracks, turned his head, and returned his gaze to the screen. Like Noah, the pedestrians on the road all stopped in their tracks and looked at the screen, causing a large group of people to gather in front of the building. The noise grew louder and louder. However, on the live broadcast of the press conference, Muging's expression remained unchanged as he responded to the reporters who asked sharp questions. Everyone has said that it's just a rumor. Don't make such baseless remarks. But the fairy tale led by President Tiantong now has the strength to do so, right? Another reporter raised his hand. Today's fairy tale has taken in almost all the cursed children in the world and accepts commissions from all over the world. Whether it's in terms of strength or reality, if the fairy tale wants to rule the world today, isn't it the most likely thing to do? Yes, yes. A female reporter also asked. As long as President Tiantong says the word, the situation of this world will completely change. It's not impossible to rule the world, right? Moreover, it's said that Fairy Tale still has the powerful secret weapon that killed the Scorpio of the Zodiac Stage V 3 years ago, And the army of protozoa during the Third Battle of Tokyo, isn't it? The third reporter began to ask. Although it's a bit inappropriate to say this, doesn't President Tiantong want to rule the world? The extremely sharp questions caused the pedestrians in front of the screen in the building to begin to clamor. However, Muging's expression remained unchanged as he answered the reporter's questions with an upright attitude. If you must ask if I want to rule the world, then I will tell everyone that I don't want to at all. His resolute and decisive words stunned the reporters who had asked sharp questions. First of all, I must correct everyone's statement that one word from me can change the situation of the world. Mugging looked around at all the reporters. Everyone may have forgotten that I'm only the acting president of Fairy Tale. The real president is only on a business trip because of an important mission. If he really gives orders, then it may change the situation of the world. I'm only his agent, and I don't have the final say in Fairyland. Therefore, my right to speak is not as important as everyone thinks. Secondly, even if I do have the right to speak to a certain extent, then I won't let Fairy Tale go to the battlefield to rule the world. Mugging said righteously. Fairy Tale's purpose from the beginning to the end, and that is to protect the cursed children who are discriminated against by the world. It was in the past, is now, and will be in the future. What we want to create is a world where the cursed children can live freely, and let those children grow up happily. Under this premise, sending those children to the battlefield to face the danger of their lives is something we will never do. Mugging changed the topic. Of course, we are not the kind of people who will not fight back after being beaten. We will not initiate a war. But if someone intends to harm Fairyland, then Fairy Tale will not be afraid of any battle. Muging's words made the passers-by in front of the screen cry out loudly. Great. Well said. As expected of President Tiantong, well said. Compared to the residents of Fairyland, the reporters at the press conference were stunned, looking at each other in dismay. Only a portion of the foreign reporters continued to question Mugging. President Tiantong's speech seems to be a little contradictory, isn't it? A foreign reporter said with a sarcastic tone. Undoubtedly, President Tiantong said that he wants all the cursed children to grow up happily, but let the cursed children be the initiators and form a police force with the facilitators to fight the protozoa. Compared to going to the battlefield, that doesn't seem to be any different, does it? Regarding this, I personally feel that it is very problematic. This kind of heavy responsibility should not be handed over to those young children. Mugging glanced at the reporter and smiled back. It's just that we adults are too useless. We have no way to deal with the protozoa that harm humans, so we can only leave it to the children. That's fine, but when the children are fighting the protozoa with all their might, we adults are still wasting our time on boring things like ruling the world, scheming against each other all day long. In comparison, don't you think that we are really much worse than those children? With that, all the reporters showed an awkward and speechless expression. Meanwhile, Mugging was still speaking. If it's possible, I personally hope that one day, we adults can be so powerful that we don't need to rely on the children's strength to protect ourselves. Instead, we can protect those children. That's what adults should do, Mugging said faintly. It's just that the current hope is too slim. Those cursed children are indeed born with power that surpasses humans. In the face of the powerful protozoa, we can only rely on them. Therefore, even if we don't have the ability, we have to know our own limitations, Mugging said earnestly. I hope everyone can remember that we are now being protected by those children. It's because of those children that we can continue to survive. It's because of those children that the protozoa can be defeated. It's because of those children that humans will not go extinct. Those children are our hope, not to be used as a scale to measure who the world belongs to. In front of all the reporters, Mugging raised one of his hands. On that hand, there was the guild emblem Fairy Tale. I swear to the emblem on my hand that I will never use the cursed children as weapons and throw them into meaningless wars. Mugging made the most solemn declaration so far. However, if someone intends to use those children to achieve selfish goals, or use those children as sacrifices for power, then I will represent the entire Fairy Tale to raise the weapon in my hand and fight to protect the children, to protect Fairyland. We Fairy Tale will never fight for the sake of invading. We will only fight to protect our family and companions, Mugging said, emphasizing each word. Even if the enemy is the whole world. With that, Mugging bowed his head to the camera and thanked it. The press conference ended there. Clap, 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 clap. On the street, the pedestrians all clapped and praised Mugging loudly. Even a group of cursed children who had gathered together clenched their fists and made the declaration. If someone really intends to destroy Fairyland, then when the time comes I'll go too. That's right. Although it's a little scary on the battlefield to protect everyone, I'll go too. Everyone study hard together, train hard, and become stronger as soon as possible, then join Fairy Tale together. Yeah. A group of children in their early teens, under the watchful eyes of the public, made such a grand wish. Seeing this scene, the pedestrians looked at these children with watchful eyes, silently sending their blessings and encouragement. After all, these children were also the hope of Fairyland. At this time, Noah, who was hiding in the crowd, had turned around and continued to walk forward. However, if one looked closely, one would notice that Noah's lips could not help but curve into a happy arc. You've created a decent city, Mugging. With that, Noah raised his head and looked at the sky as if he was looking at some enemy, his smile becoming a little cold. It seems that some clowns have really jumped around in my absence. It's time to remind them. Chapter 2095. Fairy Tale. The headquarters of the guild that created Fairyland and accommodated almost all the cursed children in the world was at the center of Fairyland. However, it was different from the fairy tale in the other world where Noah grew up. At least, as the headquarters of the guild, the fairy tale in this world was not a castle-like building, but a skyscraper of astonishing height. Seeing this skyscraper, Noah's first thought was absurd. The structure of the city is the same as Eulalia, but I didn't expect there to be such a skyscraper in the center of the city. I almost thought I saw the Tower of Babel. In the center of the maze city Eulalia, the Tower of Babel was mainly used as the cover of the underground city, followed by the residence of the gods and the shop of the spawns. At the heart of Fairyland, the skyscraper named Fairy Tale was not as tall as the Tower of Babel, but it was almost as tall as the Great Stone Monument, and definitely not shorter than the Great Stone Monument. The astonishing height really gave Noah a sense of déjà vu of the Tower of Babel, although the two looked completely different. I really wonder if 3 years is enough to make Fairyland so prosperous, let alone build such a skyscraper. With such a thought, Noah walked toward the skyscraper's door. The door seemed to be an automatic door, and it opened automatically when Noah came forward. Then, a vast office hall came into Noah's sight. In this office hall there were lively people everywhere. Some were clients who came to handle commissions. Some were guild police officers who came to accept commissions. Noah could see clearly. On the huge bulletin boards on both sides of the office hall, commissions were posted all over, and there were at least tens of thousands of them. A large number of police officers were walking back and forth around these bulletin boards. Some were worrying about what commission to accept. Some were discussing the commission. Some directly tore the commission and went to a counter to handle it. Walking in this office hall, Noah looked back and forth curiously. Welcome. At this time, a young lady standing behind the counter immediately bowed to Noah, who was passing by, with a very friendly smile on her face. This is Fairy Tale. May I ask if you're here to issue a commission? Although Fairy Tale was now open to the entire world, as the largest hub of Fairyland, it was only natural that it would be commissioned by Ren Metropolis. Our commissions are mainly divided into 5 grades, A, B, C, D, and E. If you're here to issue a commission, please fill in the commission content on the commission form here. Then, we'll classify your commission according to the difficulty of the commission content. The young lady at the counter introduced it to Noah very fluently. Of course, the higher the difficulty, the higher the level of the commission, and the higher the remuneration. We will give you a rough range of remuneration based on the level of the commission you issue. Of course, this range is only for reference. If you have any inquiries, you can ask me. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but laugh at the counter lady's skillful introduction, while thinking silently in his heart. So, the commission system that I set up back then is still in use now? Grading commissions. That was the system that Noah set up back then. After all, if the difficulty of the commission was too high, once it was accepted by some incompetent police officers, it would just be harming others. Therefore, the police officers in Fairy Tale also set up a hierarchy that corresponded to the level of the commission. Of course, the police officer hierarchy in the guild was set according to the police officer's IP ranking. Police officers in the top 1,000 of IP ranking were level A and could accept level A commissions. Police officers in the top 3,000 of IP ranking were level B and could accept level B commissions. Police officers in the top 5,000 of IP ranking were level C and could accept level C commissions. Police officers in the top 10,000 of IP ranking were level D and could accept level D commissions. Police officers in the top 10,000 of IP ranking were level E and could accept level E commissions. According to this system, high-level police officers could accept low-level commissions, but low-level police officers could not accept high-level commissions. This was the hierarchy system that Noah set up. Of course, Noah didn't know that although this hierarchy system was still in use, in fact, there were also level S commissions within the guild. Those requests were like the fairy tale of the other world. They were not posted in the lobby on the first floor, but on the floors above. In the fairy tale of the other world, only S-ranked sorcerers could accept S-ranked missions. In this world's fairy tale, only S-ranked police officers could take on S-ranked missions. However, to be able to become level S police officers, all of them were police officers in the top 300 of IP ranking. After all, level S commissions were almost all difficult commissions that needed to be carried out abroad. Generally, they were issued by high-ranking officials from all over the world. In other words, level S commissions were dangerous missions that the major countries in the world couldn't complete themselves and could only seek help from fairy tale. Such dangerous missions and missions issued by other countries were basically the most confidential missions. Therefore, these missions naturally couldn't be handled at the counter. All of them were specially evaluated, argued, and discussed by the higher-ups of fairy tale. Then, they were made into commissions and posted in a special area. Only police officers in the top 300 of IP ranking could enter this area and accept level S commissions. Noah hadn't accepted commissions from all over the world yet, so of course, he didn't have the concept of level S. Looking at the counter lady skillfully pushing the blank commission sheet in front of him, Noah's eyes turned slightly, then suddenly smiled, picked up the pen, and smoothly filled in the commission sheet. The content of the commission sheet was like this. Mission name. Search for a person. Mission content. Bring the designated person in front of the client, then the mission can be completed. Designated person Tengu Mugung. Reward, 1 yuan. Client. Noah Doria. When Noah handed such a commission slip to the counter girl, the friendly smile on the counter girl's face completely froze after reading the contents. In the bustling office hall, in the noisy atmosphere, only the space around Noah and the counter lady seemed to be isolated. It became dead silent. Finally, the smile on the counter lady's face collapsed, and she was obviously flustered. See, sir. Under the counter lady's flustered and sharp cry, many people around looked over. But Noah suddenly grabbed the counter lady's hand, and with a smile on his face, he spoke softly. Don't be so flustered, I'm just here to issue a commission, I don't have any bad intentions. Hearing Noah's words, the people around immediately had such a thought. My goodness, you're actually trying to hit on someone in fairy tale? Isn't it? Noah held the counter lady's hand tightly. The counter lady's face was full of panic. Coupled with the bad intentions mentioned just now, anyone would think that Noah was using the excuse of issuing a commission to hit on the counter lady. Under such circumstances, the people around looked at Noah with admiration and amusement. This kid, he didn't even look at where he was. There were so many police teams belonging to fairy tale around, and this kid actually flirted with the counter lady in the guild. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Thus, many people secretly rejoiced in his misfortune. At the same time as most people thought, many police officers walked towards Noah with an unfriendly face. Only the counter lady understood. She wasn't being flirted with, but she was in big trouble. Suddenly, the counter lady became more and more flustered. Chapter 2096. There was no doubt that Noah was here to cause trouble. If he wasn't here to cause trouble, why would he issue such a commission? For fairy tale, a simple search mission was not considered a big mission. Could even be said to be a child's play. Being able to get an E rating was already very good. However, who was the person Noah was looking for? Celestial Boy. Who was that? The current acting president of Fairy Tale, who single-handedly built the entire fairyland. In today's situation where fairy tale had the ability to dominate the world, Celestial Boy was definitely several levels higher than any country's head of state. In the end, Noah issued a commission, and the commission content was to bring such a big shot to him. Regardless of whether it could be done or not, even if it could be done, it couldn't be a commission that could be solved with a reward of 1 yen. Not to mention, Noah actually issued a commission to meet the acting president in Fairy Tale's territory, and the reward was 1 yen. What was this person doing here if not to cause trouble? The poor counter lady looked like she was only 17 or 18 years old, and she had obviously never encountered such an unreasonable commission. She was so flustered that she didn't know what to do. In response, Noah just smiled in response. What? Is there no way to complete this commission? No. 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 The counter lady was suddenly confused. Although she had never encountered such an unreasonable commission, which made the counter lady completely flustered, it didn't mean that the counter lady didn't know what this meant. If the counter lady really claimed that there was no way to complete a simple task to find someone, then Fairy Tale's reputation would be damaged. Therefore, the counter lady squeezed out a somewhat forced smile. Please wait here for a moment. This commission is a bit special. I have to ask my superiors. It's just a commission to find someone. There's no need to ask your superiors, right? Noah touched the counter lady's hand as if to comfort her, the smile on his face getting wider. How about this, you tell me where the designated person is, and I'll go find her myself. Is that okay? Aye. The receptionist's smile became more and more forced. I really have to ask my superiors. There's really no other way. Noah shrugged, but the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. However, I want to see the designated person by today. If I can't, then I will make a request every day and post it on the bulletin board. Then I will tell others that this is the request you made for me. The receptionist almost cried. Do you have to bully me like this? However, the lady at the counter didn't know that her tearful appearance made her look like she was being molested by a pervert. The onlookers could not bear to watch any longer. Just as the surrounding policemen were about to teach this ungrateful lecher a lesson, a dignified voice sounded. Why are you making so much noise? Along with this voice, a policeman wearing samurai-like armor and a samurai sword at his waist walked over. It was a man who was obviously very old. He was at least in his 50s. Beside the man in his later years, there was a child who was also dressed like a samurai, but was only around 12 or 13 years old. He gave off a rigid feeling like a follower. Even his young face had a serious expression. It was obvious that the samurai man and the samurai girl were a pair of policemen. Moreover, behind this pair of partners, there was a small group of police officers who were on a completely different level from the people around them. They formed a small group and walked over to this side. Looking at the group formed by the pairs of policemen, the surrounding policemen were pleasantly surprised. Mr. Tang. It's actually Mr. Tang. Haha, Mr. Tang is here. That kid is dead meat. The person who came was none other than Mr. Tang. 3 years ago, when the giant stone tablet collapsed in the Tokyo area and the Protogut animal army attacked, it was this person who acted as the leader and led the policemen in the Tokyo area to fight against the Protogut animal army. After the fiasco, in order to get Noah to help, he went to Mr. Tang from Fairy Tale. The cursed child by his side is the founder of my hall Changzheng, Ranqing Chaoxia. This pair of policemen's IP ranking 3 years ago was as high as 275, occupying a place in the top 300 IP ranking. Now that 3 years had passed, they were ranked 188th in the IP ranking, and belonged to the S-level policemen in Fairy Tale. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Mr. Tang led Ninshang Chaoxia and a pair of policemen who were obviously not low-ranked. They separated the crowd and walked over. Sensing the movement from behind, Noah also turned his head and looked over. Mr. Tang had just separated the crowd and came in front of Noah. When he saw the appearance of Noah who turned his head, his footsteps suddenly stopped, and his pair of eyes suddenly widened to the maximum. You! On the side, the serious expression on Ninshang Chaoxia's face instantly collapsed and was replaced by an unprecedented shock. Among the pairs of policemen behind Mr. Tang, many of them also widened their eyes in shock. After they rubbed their eyes in disbelief and confirmed that they did not see wrongly, Their faces suddenly became distorted. Those police officers were all old members of Fairy Tale who had joined 3 years ago. Looking at Noah's face, which was once so familiar to them, all of them blushed. What? What happened? When the policemen around saw this scene, they were directly at a loss. The receptionist who was taken advantage of by Noah also had a confused look and was stunned there. The entire office suddenly became extremely quiet. There was no sound at all. Under such circumstances, Noah was first surprised that my hall master Zhang Zhang was actually here. When he realized that my hall master Zhang Zhang and Rising Dawn's armor had the guild emblem of Fairy Tale, he immediately understood. So you guys have also joined Fairy Tale? Noah suddenly smiled. Long time no see. Don't you recognize me? Noah's words directly ignited the surrounding silence. Oh. The old members, whose faces had turned red from holding their breaths, shouted excitedly, giving everyone a fright. Of course, the thing that truly scared everyone to death immediately happened. President! Guild leader is back. Guild leader Noah is back. Accompanied by the old members' extremely excited shouts, the policemen around were first shocked, but when they realized that the name Noah seemed to be familiar, they were all stunned one after another. Especially the receptionist. She glanced at Noah, then looked at the client's name written on the commission in her hand. Her eyes couldn't be any wider. Noah Dole. This name was not unfamiliar to the members of Fairy Tale at all. This was because after joining Fairy Tale, someone would definitely tell the new members something. You have to remember, the president who founded our guild is called Noah Dole. Yes. At this moment, the man standing in the office, bathed in the cheers of all the old members of the guild, was Noah Dole, the legendary person who founded this guild, who once killed a stage V protozoan, and who saved the entire Tokyo area. After understanding this, the people around, who just wanted to see Noah get beaten up by the policemen of the guild, were all dumbfounded. Only the police officers belonging to Fairy Tale reacted. One by one, their faces flushed red. Oh. The next moment, cheers completely resounded throughout the skyscraper. Chapter 2097. The headquarters building of Fairy Tale was the tallest skyscraper in the world. Its height reached more than 1,000 meters. There were as many as 200 floors. In order to build this building, Mugging not only allowed some of the cursed children who had the ability to help with the construction to participate in the work, he even invested tens of billions of dollars. In the end, it only took 2 years to complete. A year ago, it became the tallest skyscraper in the world and a representative of Fairyland. And among the 200 floors, other than the office hall on the first floor, there were also commissions posted on the other floors. The higher the level of the commission, the more it was posted on the higher floors, allowing the high-level police officers who were allowed to enter the higher floors to select them. Therefore, if the police officer's level reached the highest level, S, then the area of activity was mainly above the 180th floor. Because of this, when the IP ranking reached the 188th place and was classified as an S-level police officer, Officer Mugging entered the office building on the first floor. The low-level police officers were so surprised. Under Officer Mugging's guidance, Noah was brought to the 180th floor, to the floor where only S-level police officers were allowed to move. Originally, on the 180th floor and above, if it was not an S-level police officer, staff and VIPs who were allowed to enter, then they were not allowed to enter. However, Noah was the true owner of Fairy Tale, so he naturally did not need to follow these rules. Therefore, Officer Mugging brought Noah to a designated lounge on the 180th floor. As long as the police officers of Fairy Tale reached a level, they would be assigned to a lounge. Therefore, this was Officer Mugging's personal lounge. In the lounge that was decorated like a harmony room, Noah and Officer Mugging were sitting on cushions around a small wooden table. On the side, Renxing Chaoxiao poured hot tea into the cylindrical porcelain cups in front of the two, then sat next to Officer Mugging, her eyes staring at Noah's face. Under Renxing Chaoxiao's gaze, Noah bitterly smiled. What's wrong? Did I offend you in any way? No. Renxing Chaoxiao quickly shook her head, but she seemed to be in a dilemma. Looking at the initiator like this, my hall chief seemed to have seen through his thoughts and sighed. Zhaoxia, if you have anything to say, just say it. The guild leader won't mind. Hearing this, Ningxiang Morning Glow made up her mind. She faced Noah's direction and sat down on the ground. She bowed and kowtowed as she spoke loudly. I'm really sorry for what happened 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Noah was slightly startled, but he soon understood. Are you referring to the Third Battle of Tokyo? Yes. Run Shangchaoxia didn't raise her head as she replied loudly. At that time I was very rude to you, to the guild leader. I am truly sorry. This child always does things by the book. She's too serious. That's why she still remembers what happened 3 years ago. Just accept her apology. My hall master Zheng closed his eyes. Of course at that time I also did a lot of rude things to you, but I don't think those were wrong, so I won't apologize to you. 3 years ago, because Noah was completely disappointed with the humans in the Tokyo area, he announced that Fairy Tail would not participate in the Third Battle of Tokyo to resist the invading army of protogut animals. It should be known that at that time, most of the outstanding police officers were in Fairy Tail. Of course, Noah's decision caused the Tokyo area to lose most of the power to resist the protogut animals, causing the remaining police force to be defeated. Facing the army of protogut animals that was about to invade the Tokyo area, at that time, as the head of the police force, my hall chief had no choice but to go to Fairy Tail to persuade Noah to participate in the battle. For this reason, my hall chief even threatened and coerced Noah. From that time, Noah knew that although my hall chief considered himself a samurai, in order to protect justice, he was an ambitious person who would do anything. Unfortunately, my hall chief met Noah. An ambitious person met a hero. When two people meet on a narrow road, naturally the brave will win. So, with his powerful strength, Noah easily defeated my hall chief, which eventually led to a series of events. Recalling what happened at that time, Noah shook his head with a smile, picked up the hot tea on the table, and spoke indifferently while drinking. For me, what happened at that time did have a great impact. It made me understand the good and evil, light and darkness, upright and insidious sides of human nature, and it had a great impact on me. In contrast, the fact that you held me hostage is irrelevant, Noah said in an indifferent tone. So you don't need to take it to heart. Is that so? My hall chief nodded. That's great. Thank you for your understanding. Ninsheng Zhaoxia respectfully bowed several more times, then finally raised her head. Looking at the pair of police officers in front of him, Noah could not help but smile. Compared to that, what I didn't expect was that you would join Fairy Tail. I just judged that joining this guild would be more beneficial for us. My hall chief said bluntly. After all, Zhaoxia needs the preparation that can only be made by Fairyland to prevent the activation of the protozoan virus. I also think that by joining this guild, I can achieve the justice that I want to protect in a greater sense. Now, I don't just want to protect the Tokyo area but the whole world. Not bad, very noble, Noah said as he sipped his hot tea as if nothing had happened. But, as far as I know, Fairyland's position in the world is not on the side of justice right now, right? Are you referring to the so-called world-ruling public opinion? My hall chief snorted coldly. That's just a fabricated public opinion to achieve the hearts of the world's rulers. They are definitely not the ones who stand on the side of justice. But Fairy Tail is definitely not justice, right? Noah looked deeply into my cousin's eyes. Mugging said it before, we are fighting to protect our companions and family, not to protect all of humanity, and certainly not to protect the world. Do you understand? I know what you want to say. My hall chief was silent for a moment, before finally speaking in a deep voice. Although it's a little different from my ideals, this guild can provide me with a channel to achieve the justice I believe in. No matter what, I will fight as a member of this guild. That's good. Noah smiled, put the hot tea in his hand on the table, and looked at my hall chief. Since you brought me here, that means Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanju and Rentaro are not here, right? They are indeed not here. My hall chief nodded. Rentaro, Lan Yuan, and Yanju have already raised their IP ranking to the 7th place. They are currently on a business trip as the leaders of the various tour groups sent by the guild to retrieve the cursed children. Hina Sprout has also raised her IP ranking to the 1st place, becoming the strongest initiator. She is currently on a mission as the ace of our guild. 1st place? Hina? Noah couldn't help but laugh. That's quite impressive. Before meeting Noah, Hina's IP ranking had already risen to the 98th place, making her one of the top 100. Now that 3 years had passed, Noah knew that Hina must have made a name for herself. It wouldn't be strange for her to make it into the top 3. Who would have thought that Noah still underestimated Hina? This child actually went straight for the first place. Thinking back to the first time they met, the little girl who was sleepy during the day and couldn't even ride a bicycle properly due to her owl personality, but turned into an expert sniper at night, Noah couldn't help but feel nostalgic. That's not right. Noah suddenly remembered something important and realized what was going on. Hina is very strong, but since she can raise her IP ranking, it means that Hina has become a police officer again, found a promoter and formed a partner, right? If that's the case, who is Hina's partner? Chapter 2098. It was developed and issued by the International Initiator Monitoring Organization, IISO. It was a ranking based on the number of protozoa that each existing pair of police officers had defeated and their achievements. Why was it called the IP ranking? The reason was very simple. It was because the police officers were partners of the initiator of the cursed child and the facilitator of humanity. Initiator. Facilitator. Taking the first letter of the two, that would be I and P. Therefore, the so-called IP ranking must be a ranking that was registered by the initiator and facilitator of the partner who became a police officer. In the past, Tina's partner facilitator was the professor who transformed himself into a mechanical soldier for the new human creation project. Of course, that professor did not have any combat ability. Generally, he was only giving orders to Tina and letting her complete the mission. The reason why Tina was able to enter the top 100 at that time was entirely due to her personal strength. After joining the fairy tale, Tina had lost her facilitator and even her IP ranking was frozen. It was not impossible to start over. But without a partner facilitator, Tina would not be able to increase her IP ranking at all, right? While Noah was thinking about this, Hall Master Zheng was stunned and said, "That's right, Hall Master Zheng. Don't you know that you're Tina Sprinter's facilitator?" Me? Noah was stunned. When did he become Tina's facilitator? It seems that you really don't know about this. Officer Zheng frowned and said, "As early as 3 years ago, President Tiantong announced to the public that you were out on an important mission and would not be back in a short period of time. After that, Tina Sprinter also registered as a police officer with the International Initiator Monitoring Organization, and her facilitator partner at that time was you. In other words, Tina registered Noah as her facilitator without his consent at all. I think that this should be President Tiantong's idea." My Hall Master Zheng said. "President Tiantong has said that our guild will definitely become the cradle of police officers in the future. As the guild president, if you don't have your own IP ranking, it's inevitable that people will criticize you. That's why Tina Sprout registered you as her promoter. You're active in the front lines against the protozoa, leaving behind many achievements in various countries around the world. In the end, together with you, she was promoted to the first place in the IP ranking half a year ago." What? Noah was dumbfounded. "In other words, I've also become number 1 on the IP ranking?" "Yes." My cousin nodded his head. "Furthermore, everyone in the world knows about this." Noah was speechless. Who would have thought that he would actually become the first in the IP rankings without knowing it at all? Wasn't this a little too sudden? However, my Hall Master Zheng is right. Undoubtedly, as the president of Fairy Tale, Noah has obtained a police officer's license and has personally trained many outstanding police officers. How can his IP ranking be too low? Otherwise, when Fairy Tale is released to the world, it will inevitably become a topic for foreigners to pass time. It's not like it won't have any impact on the guild. Tiantong Mu is the acting president and Thousand Life Summers president's advisor. They also formed a police force partnership 3 years ago. Their rankings have risen quite a bit in the past 3 years. They are currently ranked 3rd in the IP rankings. My police officer said in high spirits. In addition to the rest of the S-grade police officers, our guild occupies 7 of the top 10 police officers. There's no doubt that we're the strongest civilian organization in the world. As early as 3 years ago, everyone in the world already knew that among the police officers, the power of the first pair was so strong that it could even influence the military structure of the entire world. One could imagine how powerful the top 10 police officers in the IP rankings were, and what kind of impact they would have on the world. Under such circumstances, Not only did Tina kick out the police officer who was ranked first in the previous IP rankings and become the strongest initiator, even Fairy Tail had 7 pairs of police officers who were ranked in the top 10. How could she not become the strongest? Countries around the world had always been worried that Fairy Tail would dominate the world and control them. Firstly, it was because of the current situation. Secondly, it was because Fairy Tail did indeed have the ability to do so. The 7 pairs of top 10 police officers were proof of this. IP ranking number 1. Noah Doria Tina Sprout. IP ranking number 3 Tiantong Mu. Longevity Summer World. IP ranking number 7. Riken Rentaro Ain Lanhara. Together with the other 4 pairs of police officers, they were the strongest fighting force of Fairy Tail. This was a well-known fact. Not only did Noah partner up with Hina and become the first IP ranking, but even mugging Summer World Rentaro and Ain Lanhara had made great progress in the past 3 years and reached the point where they could influence the military structure of the world with their individual strength. Coupled with the completion of Fairyland and the expansion of the guild, there were indeed a lot of changes in 3 years. With this in mind, Noah could not help but speak in a low voice. I just don't know if these 3 years have changed the feelings of the holy ruler of Tokyo. My captain asked. What did you just say? Nothing. Noah came back to his senses and shook his head to get rid of the random thoughts in his mind and returned to the topic at hand. Since Rentaro and Ain Lanhara are traveling around the world as the leaders of the tour group, where did Mugging, Summerworld, and Hina go? Hearing this question, my captain suddenly became serious. What's wrong? Noah keenly sensed that the atmosphere was not right. Did something happen? No. My captain shook his head and said so. It's just that, even if something did happen, it wouldn't be strange. Even if something did happen, it wouldn't be strange. Noah frowned. What do you mean? Not long ago, countries all over the world expressed their desire to have a meeting with Fairyland. My captain pondered for a moment and then revealed the news. The location is in the Tokyo area. A meeting. Noah narrowed his eyes. No wonder Mugging appeared in the live broadcast of the press conference. So he went to the Tokyo area for a meeting? 4 countries all over the world to suddenly request for a meeting at this time. It's definitely because of Fairy Tail. My captain looked straight at Noah. Among them, if some countries want to harm the president of Tendo, it's not impossible. Just like 3 years ago, Chiwu Xuanzong of the Daibin area proposed a meeting with the ruler of Tokyo, but repeatedly sent assassins to assassinate the emperor. Those who came did not come with good intentions, and those with good intentions would not come. In such a tense situation, representatives of various countries issued a request for a meeting, and the location was the only Tokyo area that had made their stance clear, that they were definitely on the side of Fairy Tail. Therefore, it was normal for someone to want to play some dirty tricks. After all, Noah, the real president, was not in Fairyland, and Mugging, the acting president, was the only pillar of support in Fairyland. Once Mugging fell, there would be no leader, and Fairyland would definitely be in chaos, and others would take advantage of the situation. Therefore, although nothing had happened at the moment, it would not be strange if something suddenly happened. That was what my captain wanted to express. Although Tina Sprout went to the Tokyo area as a guard, and the president of Tendo and consultant Qianshou are also the top 3 powerhouses in the IP ranking, it's better to be safe than sorry. My captain said. Under the targeting of countries all over the world, the president of Tendo cannot guarantee her safety. Noah immediately fell silent. My captain also fell silent and did not say anything more. In the lounge, a somewhat oppressive atmosphere spread, and Ninsei Asakaya could not help but hold her breath. After a while, Noah stood up. It seems that I have to go to the Tokyo area earlier than expected. Chapter 2099. The sky gradually darkened. Nighttime in this world is very scary. That was because at night, in the dead of the night, the low growls and roars of the protozoa would pass through the giant stone monument from time to time and reverberate around the edge of the city. The timid people couldn't even fall asleep, afraid that they would never wake up again if they fell asleep. Of course, in the noisy city center, such a sound is impossible to reach. Whether it is Fairyland or Tokyo, it is the same. Compared to the rapidly developing Fairyland, Tokyo has not changed much compared to 3 years ago. The holy residence where the ruler of Tokyo lived was the same. It had been there for 10 years without any changes. At this moment, in a living room of the holy residence, two young girls in their prime of life are sitting opposite each other, as if they are having a tea party. It's been a long time since I leisurely drank tea with Lord Holy Sun like this. The girl who said such a sentence is Tenko Mugino. Behind Mugino, Xiaoshi stood there quietly like a secretary. On the opposite side of Mugging was a pure and holy young lady. That is a girl as white and pure as snow. The girl is wearing a white wedding dress, white lace gloves on her hands, and a luxurious top hat on her head, with a stunning sense of sacredness. It is believed that as long as it is a person in Tokyo, then no one will not recognize this girl in her prime of life. The ruler of Tokyo, Holy Sun. If, after 3 years, Mugino has become much more mature than before, and all the childishness has faded away, the change is not small, then Holy Sun is just the opposite. Time does not seem to have left any trace on this holy girl, making this young head of state still as holy and beautiful as 3 years ago. However, those in the know are sure to know that the change of Holy Sun is not on the surface, but in the heart. At least, until 3 years ago, no matter what kind of important occasion she attends, she needs to be accompanied by an assistant like Tenko Kikuchi or the like. Compared to 3 years ago, this girl has become extremely independent and wise, no longer the young head of state who is mocked by others as a vase and looked down upon after losing her assistant. Thus, the Elysian Emperor nodded at Mugung with a dignified and polite smile. After all, Tenko Kikuchi and I both need to manage a region. If not for this period of official business, then we would not have the chance to meet. I'm fine, at least I have Xiaoshi to help me, and there is also a group of smart and capable people in the guild. Otherwise, for a student like me who just graduated a year ago and didn't even go to university, I really can't torment such a big fairyland, Mugino replied with a smile. Compared to the Holy Son of Heaven who has been dealing with official business alone since 3 years ago, I am still far behind. Don't be so humble, Guildmaster Tiantong. You're someone who built fairyland single-handedly. No one would think that you're inferior to me. The Elysian child gently shook his head. Moreover, I can only handle official business, unlike Tenko Kikuchi who has great power. To be honest, being at the same table as you, I feel very safe. Lord Holy Sun, you feel safe, but that's not all because of me, is it? Mugino laughed. Lord Holy Sun must have guessed that Tina is nearby, am I right? That's one of the reasons. Holy Sun nodded. Although it's already an honor to have Sword Ghost and Think Tank at the same table, but with the rumored Black Wind keeping watch around, then nothing will go wrong. In the IP ranking, as long as it was a police officer ranked in the top 100, they would be given a nickname. 3 years ago, Tina, who ranked 98th in the IP ranking, already had a nickname, Black Wind. Today, Tina still used the nickname from that time, making the name Black Wind widely known around the world. Of course, Mugino, who ranked 3rd in the IP ranking, also had a nickname like Xiaoshi. Mugino was famous for his swift and ruthless Tenko-style sword drawing technique. His combat power was even stronger than most of the cursed children, so he was given the nickname Sword Ghost. Xiaoshi, on the other hand, was a cursed child with dolphin genes. Among the cursed children, he was one of the rare brainiacs. Usually he was a supporting character. Although his combat power was not outstanding, he could clearly analyze the weakness of any enemy. Thus he was given the nickname Think Tank. By the way, Rentaro and Yinju's nicknames were Chariot and Tornado respectively. The former's identity as a mechanical soldier of the New Humans Creation Project was already known. Once the Super Holmia metal prosthesis was used like a rain of bullets, the battle was like a large chariot, extremely terrifying, so he was given the nickname Chariot. The latter was a cursed child with rabbit-like genes. Among the current cursed children, his speed was definitely one of the best. On the battlefield, once he charged, not even his shadow could be seen. He was like a tornado passing through the battlefield. Thus he was given the nickname Tornado. As for Noah, as the world's strongest initiator, the promoter of Tina Sprinter, ranked 1st in the IP ranking, it was naturally impossible for him not to be given a nickname. However, for the past 3 years, Noah had not appeared in people's sight. The intelligence agencies of some countries could not even investigate the most basic information such as his birthplace. It was as if this person had appeared out of thin air. He had been active for a year and a half and then suddenly disappeared. He was as mysterious as a supernatural existence, which made people shudder in fear. Therefore, until Tina broke into the top 10 of the IP ranking, Noah finally received a nickname, the Hermit. This was Noah's current nickname. Thinking of this, Shang Tianzi lowered his head. His pair of eyes began to ripple. Then Shang Tianzi asked in a low voice, as if he was looking forward to it, but also as if he was uneasy. He hasn't come back yet? No. Mu Gung could not help but sigh. Since he left 3 years ago, he hasn't come back. And in any case, our guild's intelligence department has no way to collect information about his whereabouts. Xiashi interrupted and said softly, "It's as if the president disappeared into thin air." As the words fell, the entire meeting room was filled with a somewhat heavy atmosphere. Is that so? Shang Tianzi's eyes flashed with a flash of disappointment. He turned his head, looked at the night view outside the window and muttered, "It's been 3 years?" "Yes." Mu Gung also looked at the night view outside the window and said so. "Time really flies. For me it's a bit long." Shang Tianzi's voice became a little distant. Yes, 3 years is too long. At the very least, Elysian Prince felt that the past 3 years had been too long. But 3 years have passed. Shang Tianzi whispered, "It's time for him to come back, right?" When he said this, Elysian Son of Heaven's tone was extremely uncertain. It was like he was looking forward to it, but also like he was afraid of being hurt, which would definitely arouse the sympathy of all men. In this regard, Mu Gung seemed to know something. He looked at Shang Tianzi with some amusement and said so. "Although our president is extremely domineering and does things his own way, as far as I know, he is not the kind of man who would break an agreement, please don't worry." Hearing this, Xiashi, who was standing next to Mu Gung, could not help but smile. Shang Tianzi seemed to have only just come back to his senses. His pretty face blushed after taking a deep breath. He suppressed the shyness in his heart and changed the topic. "It's getting late, President Tiantong, why don't you go back and rest early? There's an important international meeting tomorrow." "That's true." Mu Gung smiled sweetly. "Then I'll go back to the hotel first, Master Shang Tianzi. Please take care of me tomorrow." After that, Mu Gung stood up from his seat. Shang Tianzi immediately stood up and walked out of the meeting room with Mu Gung and Xiashi. Whether it was Mu Gung, Xiashi, or Shang Tianzi, none of them noticed. On the top floor of a building far away from the holy residence, a man in a black robe stood facing the wind, looking in the direction of the holy residence. Through the window he looked at Shang Tianzi, his whole body trembling. Chapter 2100. Lord Holy Son of Heaven. The voice that came out of the black-robed man's mouth was full of love. However, in addition to love, there was also extreme madness and greed in the voice. "I'm finally back, Lord Holy Son of Heaven." The black-robed man stared at the Holy Son of Heaven who was walking out of the room in the holy residence. His voice was full of madness as he muttered, "You're mine. You're mine. You're mine after all." As he spoke, the black-robed man's lips curled into a hair-raising arc under his hood. Then the black-robed man bowed. Bang! In the next moment, in a muffled explosion, the black-robed man stepped on the ground and burst out like a cannonball. With a sharp sound, he rushed straight toward the holy residence. That speed was really faster than a bullet. The holy residence, which was originally a bit far from the building where the black-robed man was, closed almost half of the distance in less than a second. With this speed, the black-robed man could definitely break through the window of the holy residence in the next second and attack his target. This kind of physical strength was really shocking. Even the cursed child might not be able to reach this level. However, in the next moment, the black-robed man suddenly noticed something. At the top of a building further away from the holy residence, a red light suddenly flashed. The black-robed man suddenly came to a halt. He ignored inertia and gravity and abruptly stopped in midair. Almost at the same time, a sniper bullet cut through the air and swept less than a centimeter away from the black-robed man's chest, landing on the wall of a nearby building. Bang! The powerful sniper bullet directly blew up the wall, leaving a shocking bullet hole in the wall. The black-robed man who was in a frenzy just now finally reacted and broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time, the black-robed man also realized something. Someone was sniping at him. That red light just now was the muzzle flame of the sniper rifle when it was fired. But how is this possible? The black-robed man turned his head and looked in the direction of the building. He whispered in disbelief. This has to be at least 2 kilometers away? Sniping from a distance of 2 kilometers? And it was so accurate? Who was it that could do such an inconceivable thing? Could it be? The black-robed man thought of a person, and his eyes under the hood suddenly widened. However, the black-robed man's time to think was over. The black-robed man saw it clearly. At the top of the building more than 2 kilometers away, bursts of red light flashed one after another. The black-robed man's expression changed dramatically, and he fell down without hesitation. Whoosh 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 whoosh. A few sniper bullets scraped through the air, creating a sharp sound as they pierced through the air. Suddenly, they flew past the black-robed man's position. Bang 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 bang. In the next moment, the powerful sniper bullets landed in the air one after another, blowing up the concrete on the ground where they landed. Whether it was the walls or the road, they were all blown up, leaving bullet holes in them. Once again, the black-robed man, who dodged in advance because he sensed the muzzle flame, broke out in a cold sweat as if he had escaped a calamity. The moment he landed on the ground, he immediately dodged and rushed into a nearby building. His back was pressed against the wall as he hid. The opponent's sniping was too terrifying. It was accurate to such an extent from more than 2 kilometers away. If he didn't hide, the black-robed man would be dead for sure. But that kid isn't a close combat initiator. As long as I hide, there won't be a problem, the black-robed man muttered to himself. In the end, this sentence was exchanged for a voice. Indeed, I'm not a close combat initiator, but that doesn't mean I can't fight in close range. When this sentence rang out from the building and passed into the black-robed man's ears, his heart stopped beating. However, the black-robed man's subconscious saved him once again. He subconsciously rushed forward and left the wall behind him. Bang! The wall suddenly exploded. A petite figure rushed in from the outside, directly passing through the rubble that was still flying in the air, and shot in the direction of the black-robed man. The sniper rifle in her hand was used as a blunt weapon, and she heavily swung it in the direction of the black-robed man. This time the black-robed man couldn't react in time. A powerful attack that was as quick as a thunderbolt was simply beyond the standards of a human. The black-robed man could only watch as the sniper rifle, which was used as a blunt weapon, hit his body. Then something unexpected happened. Clank! When the heavy sniper rifle hit the black-robed man's body, a crisp sound like hitting steel sounded from under the black robe. The black-robed man was knocked away by the powerful force. After rolling on the ground several times, he stopped, turned over and jumped up, staring straight ahead. It's really surprising. I thought that the blow just now was enough to get rid of you. The one who said this was the petite girl holding the heavy sniper rifle. The girl was wearing a one-piece blue dress. Her slender and petite shoulders were exposed, and the sleeves were black. Although she was less than 150 centimeters tall, from the performance just now, there was no doubt that extremely terrifying power was hidden in that petite body. The moonlight shone in through the gap in the wall that was smashed by the girl, illuminating the girl's silver-gold hair and a pair of scarlet eyes. The figure like the Grim Reaper made the black-robed man say the girl's name in a hoarse voice. Tina Sprinter. The girl was Tina, the world's strongest initiator, the ace of fairy tale Tina Sprinter. Looking at the cursed child bathed in the moonlight, the black-robed man felt that even his breathing was about to stop. At the moment when the pair of blood-red eyes stared at him, the black-robed man only felt the hair all over his body stand up, and even his scalp was a little numb. 3 years ago, Tina was already one of the top 100 cursed children in the IP ranking, and her profession was an assassin. At that time, Tina already had an illustrious reputation, and the name Black Wind resounded throughout the world. Even if she wasn't known by everyone, but those who knew her knew that up until now, no one had ever survived from the person she wanted to kill. The only exception was the Son of Heaven 3 years ago, because at that time, Noah was protecting Tina's target, which was why Tina failed. Since then, Tina joined Fairy Tale. That failure seemed to have made the Grim Reaper of this inner world even scarier. In just 2 years, he had risen to the top of the IP rankings and slaughtered countless protogut animals. Even the number of stage 4 protogut animals he had killed was unknown. Under such circumstances, the cold aura that came from a long period of killing was enough to make anyone who looked into Tina's eyes feel their body temperature plummeting. Although the black-robed man was very confident in his own strength, only at this moment did he understand one thing. That is, even if he was very special compared to the girl in front of him, he was still not on the same level. Damn brat! Being forced to realize this, the black-robed man's face under the hood began to distort. However, Tina just coldly looked at the black-robed man. After a while she turned her head, looked to the side and said so. Okay, all of you come out. As soon as the words fell, the entire place suddenly fell silent. However, very soon a pretentious voice rang out. Aya, Aya, I was discovered so easily, as expected of the legendary Black Wind. Accompanied by such a voice, two figures rushed out from the shadows where Tina was looking and landed next to the black-robed man. Looking at the two people, Tina frowned slightly. Allow me to introduce myself, Honorable Strongest. A tall and slender man in a crimson tuxedo with a clown mask on his face took off his hat and bowed toward Tina in a pretentious manner. My name is Leeching-een. Beside me is my daughter, Leech Little Binay. Let's say that 3 years ago I was acquainted with that mysterious president of your family, right? Yes, Leeching-een. 3 years ago he attracted the stage V Scorpio, and almost brought disaster to the entire Tokyo area. The madman who attempted to destroy the world. Chapter 2101. Leeching-een. Tina's furrowed brows slowly relaxed. Her scarlet eyes shot straight at Leeching-een, then turned to Binay Leech Jr. Leech Binay held a pair of odachi in his hands, his eyes also becoming incomparably scarlet, but with an innocent expression, he said these words. Tina Sprinter, I know you. Dad told me that you're the strongest one among us. Saying this, Binay Leech Jr.'s murderous aura and blood energy rose. So I want to chop you up. Undoubtedly, his expression was so innocent, but Binay Leech Jr.'s words and aura were quite terrifying. In this regard, Tina's expression didn't even change. She said somewhat coldly, You are not my opponent. Binay Leech Jr.'s eyes widened, and then his eyes became even more scarlet. Without a doubt, this cold-blooded cursed child was angry. Dad, Binay Leech Jr. said without turning his head. I want to chop her up. Even if you don't let me, I must chop her up. After saying this, Binay Leech Jr. didn't wait for Leeching-een's reply. His petite figure suddenly moved, like a mantis stalking a cicada, and raised the odachi in his hands high. Duh! Tina's feet suddenly touched the ground, and her figure rapidly retreated. However, Binay the Leech pounced in front of Tina at an astonishing speed and slashed out a thunderous slash at the retreating Tina. Chop you to death! Chop you to death! Chop you to death! That was a deranged cry. The cursed child named Binay Leech Jr. chased fiercely, and mercilessly slashed like a storm, causing streaks of cold light to appear in the air. Like a real blade, he slashed in Tina's direction like a storm. That terrifying continuous slash. If it was Tina 3 years ago, she would have been cut into pieces. After all, 3 years ago, Leeching-een and Binay Leech Jr.'s IP ranking was already 134, and this ranking had been frozen for a long time and there was no update. 3 years had passed, and Leech Little Binay's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. At the very least, Tina was certain that even the top 20 initiators in the IP rankings were only at this level. Hina, on the other hand, was not a melee-type cursed child. Her IP ranking 3 years ago was only 98, so she was naturally no match for the current Binay the Leech. However, after 3 years, Binay the Leech had changed a lot, but Tina had changed even more. In the face of this terrifying storm of sword strikes that could have easily killed her 3 years ago, Tina looked on calmly. Her slender body was like a leaf as she dodged back and forth, evading all of the sword strikes with brute force. Immediately after, Tina suddenly spun around, and the sniper rifle in her hand transformed into a blunt weapon once again. Then she flicked upwards from the bottom to the top. Bang! Binay Leech didn't even have the chance to dodge. He was smashed in the chin by the butt of the sniper rifle. He flew out like a bullet, brushing past Leeching-een's side and smashing into the wall. Guha! Binay Leech spat out the air in his lungs. His body slid down from the wall, and he knelt on the ground. The initiator, whose strength was enough to rank in the top 20 IP rankings, was knocked down by Tina in one hit. The black-robed man sucked in a breath of cold air. Leeching-een's pupils slowly contracted under his mask. After a while, He pressed down on his hat and said, "So that's how it is. Is this domain?" Domain. It wasn't an ability but a realm. A realm that only the cursed child could reach. When the cursed child broke through the limits of their growth, a phenomenon called domain would appear on their body. Those who reached domain had extremely powerful strength. Those who hadn't reached domain would never be able to defeat those who reached domain. Of course, this realm wasn't something that just anyone could reach. Only a very small number of initiators with extremely high IP rankings had the possibility of reaching domain. Then how high was it? This was something that hadn't been calculated yet. However, from the fact that even Tina, who was ranked 98th in the IP rankings 3 years ago, was unable to reach this realm, it could be seen that those who could reach the beginning of the domain would have to be at least in the top 20 or even the top 10 of the IP rankings. Tina had only reached domain realm 2 years ago. After that, her strength greatly increased, and she had won many battles. Finally, 1 year ago she had reached first in IP rankings, becoming the strongest initiator. In other words, the current Tina's strength was also incomparable to before. It was because of the existence of this domain that the cursed child's strength was strong enough to influence the military situation of the world. Tina, who had already become the strongest initiator, now even if she was to face off against a stage V primitive animal that could destroy the world, she would still have the ability to win. This was the difference between those who had reached domain and those who hadn't. The reason why the Holy Son of Heaven said that with Tina there would be no mistakes was because he knew that Tina had already reached domain realm. Although Xiaoshi's IP was ranked 3rd, logically speaking, he should have also reached domain realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have such a ranking. Unfortunately, Xiaoshi was the brainiac initiator, and the real combat strength was Mu Geng, who had the terrifying sword-drawing technique. In terms of combat strength 3 years ago, Mu Geng was even stronger than Tina. It could be imagined that Mu Geng's strength was also terrifyingly strong. However, not long after Tina reached domain, Mu Geng's growth limit was broken and Tina, who had rapidly grown, left him behind. Otherwise, Tina wouldn't have been able to become the strongest initiator and raise her IP ranking to the highest by herself. Unfortunately, after reaching domain, the rate of the primitive animal virus in the cursed child's body would greatly increase. If it wasn't for the fairy tale, which had an agent that completely suppressed the invasion of the primitive animal virus, Tina would have very likely become a primitive animal. Hee hee. Li Qingyin let out a frightening laugh under his mask. No wonder you could become that man's initiator. Tui. The black-robed man spat in disdain, and his voice became filled with disgust. As expected, the initiator of monsters is also a monster. Hearing this, Tina's expression didn't change. She lowered the sniper rifle in her hand, and didn't even aim, as if she was really planning to use the sniper rifle as a blunt weapon. Her gaze fell on Li Qingyin and the black-robed man. "Who sent you here? Is that important?" Li Qingyin let out a low laugh. "You only need to know that someone wants the life of the celestial child, and that is enough. Not only the celestial child, but the Holy Son of Heaven is also our target." The black-robed man's laughter was the kind of laughter that only despicable people would have. Of course, the celestial child can die, but the Holy Son of Heaven can't die. I still want to properly dote on her. The vulgarity in his words caused Tina's expression to become cold again. "It seems that no matter how much I ask, you won't tell me." Tina stared intently at Li Qingyin and the black-robed man. "First, I'll make you lose the ability to fight. Leave the interrogation to our companions in the guild." In the air, an astonishing pressure suddenly filled the air. The most powerful initiator who had reached the realm of domain was finally serious. The first to react was Li Qingyin. Li Qingyin suddenly pulled out 2 very strange-looking guns from his waist, and without hesitation, he pulled the triggers one after another at Tina. Bang 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 bang. Following the continuous firing of the guns, bullets pierced through the air and enveloped Tina's direction. However, before that could happen, Tina had already disappeared. With a flash, she dodged the incoming shots like a ghost. Ignoring the bullets that fell near her feet, she suddenly charged forward. The sniper rifle in her hand whistled through the air as it violently swung toward Li Qingyin. Her speed was astonishingly fast. With Li Qingyin's speed, it was impossible to dodge. However, Li Qingyin wasn't an ordinary person. Snap! Li Qingyin suddenly snapped his fingers. Hum! In the next instant, an invisible repulsive force suddenly expanded from Li Qingyin's body, and it met Tina's sniper rifle. Dong! The sound of a heavy impact resounded. Chapter 2102. Boom! The powerful sniper rifle and the invisible repulsive field collided with each other. Not only was there a heavy muffled sound, but there was also a strong gust of wind that attacked the surroundings. Hina was surprised by the result. While Hina was still in shock, an ugly voice came from behind her. Did you forget about me? Stinky brat. Following this sentence, a black-robed figure whose entire body was shrouded in black robes sprang out from behind Tina and raised his fist before abruptly swinging it down. Boom! The moment the muffled explosion sounded, the entire ground was smashed into pieces by the heavy punch. Like glass, the ground cracked and collapsed. Rubble and debris shot out in all directions like bullets. Li Qingyin, who was closest to Hina, snapped his fingers again, and a repulsive force spread out, deflecting the rubble and debris. As for the black-robed man, he didn't even have time to react. He just let the rubble and debris fall on his body, causing a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds. Then, the two turned their heads at the same time and looked in the same direction. There, Hina just happened to fall from the sky. Obviously, when the black-robed man's shocking punch came, Hina had already jumped and dodged in advance. After standing still, Hina looked up and stared at Li Qingyin and the black-robed man. Her eyes began to change. So that's how it is? Hina whispered. Are you also the product of the new human creation project? If that wasn't the case, then there was no way to explain the repulsive force that Li Qingyin used and the black-robed man's strength and defense. It was obvious that it wasn't a power that an ordinary human could have. Li Qingyin had an imaginary device implanted in his body that could create a repulsive force field within a certain range. The black-robed man's body must have been modified as well. He probably had a mechanical body like Rentaro. Both of them were mechanical soldiers created by the new human creation project. Speaking of which, you're also a product of the new human creation project, right? Li Qingyin seemed to have thought of something and looked at Hina with a burning gaze. With a chip implanted in his brain, he can control a small reconnaissance aircraft called Sandfeld from a long distance. He can snipe from a very long distance and control all the information within his reconnaissance range. He's a super existence that combines the power of the cursed child and the mechanical soldiers. Furthermore, he's reached the realm of domain. I really want you to join us. Unfortunately, I won't betray my brother, Hina said without hesitation. The only person I can follow is my brother. But that guy has already disappeared, the black-robed man said with a cursing tone and a smile. Maybe that guy is already dead. As soon as he said that, whoosh! Tina's body transformed into a series of afterimages as she hurtled toward the black-robed figure. The black-robed man was shocked. He quickly crossed his arms and blocked in front of himself. In the next moment, a sharp military dagger was tightly grasped in Hina's hand. With a cold glint, she stabbed at the black-robed man like raindrops. Ding 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 ding. The continuous stabs landed on the black-robed man's body, causing a series of crisp sounds. Ha 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 ha. The black-robed man laughed out loud. It's useless. No matter what kind of attack it is, it can't hurt me. Hina ignored the ear-piercing laughter. The military dagger in her hand continued to stab. The onlookers could only see the cold glint of the dagger as it landed on the black-robed man's body, causing a series of crisp sounds. The first person to realize that something was wrong was still Li Qingyin. That idiot! Li Qingyin raised his gun without hesitation and pointed it at Hina. However, Hina suddenly took a step and darted into the black-robed man's shadow. Li Qingyin's gun suddenly lost its target. That was because Hina's petite body was completely blocked by the black-robed man. Under such circumstances, Hina continued to stab the black-robed man's body with the military dagger. If one looked closely, they would realize that Hina's relentless stabs all landed on the black-robed man's left shoulder joint. Thus, when Hina stabbed the military dagger for the umpteenth time, there was no crisp sound this time. Crack! The sound of something cracking suddenly came from the black-robed man's left shoulder. What? The black-robed man cried out. Tisk! Li Qingyin was speechless. He gave up on the gun and rushed out. He activated the imaginary device in his body and concentrated the repulsive force field on his palm, forming an invisible repulsive force spear. Leech Binet Jr. finally recovered from his injuries with the strong regenerative ability of the cursed child. He held two odachi and pounced like a crazy demon. In the end, no one noticed. While Hina was stabbing the black-robed man endlessly, the sniper rifle in her other hand was already pointed at the ground. When Li Qingyin and Leech Binet Jr. were behind her, Hina's voice echoed. Explosive bullet. With that, Hina pulled the trigger of the sniper rifle. Boom! In the uninhabited building, a violent explosion suddenly occurred. Flames surged out of the building like a wave and instantly shattered the glass and walls. The pedestrians on the road were all shocked. Looking at the unoccupied buildings filled with flames, one by one, they were shocked, panicked, and in a commotion. Some even began to call the police. The explosion set the building ablaze and instantly created a fire scene. No one knew that the building was not on fire, but that someone was fighting. Gulp, cough, ugh. In the center of the explosion, in the building that had turned into a sea of fire, Li Qingyin, Leech Binet Jr., and the black-robed man were all on the ground. Their bodies were charred black and they let out muffled groans. Although they were not killed by the explosion, they were severely injured. Hina was standing in the middle, but she was not affected at all. She threw away the sniper rifle that had exploded because of the powerful explosive bullet, and held a military dagger in her hand. She looked at the black-robed man and said coldly, "This is what you get for speaking rudely to my brother. Bastard!" The black-robed man's face was ferocious. So strong. Leech Binet Jr. finally showed an expression of fear. Really a monster? Li Qingyin could not help but let out a bitter laugh. Because no one knew better than these three people why Hina was unscathed in the face of the explosion that did not distinguish between friend and foe. At the moment of the explosion, Hina released three spherical objects. That was the Sandfeld. It was a small reconnaissance aircraft that could collect all the information within its scope and directly transmit it to the user's mind. With the help of the three small reconnaissance drones, Tina was able to gather information about the explosion in an instant. She calculated the area of effect of the explosion and used her sniper rifle at the area where the explosion was the weakest to disperse the waves of flames and shockwaves that were rushing towards her. That's right. She dispersed it. Hina's attack had blown away the explosion itself. Undoubtedly, the cursed child was not a close combat type, but he had such strength. With such strength, it was no wonder that the strongest initiator would give up on long-range sniping, which was the most advantageous for him, and directly rush over. How terrifying. The initiator of monsters is also a monster, you said it yourself. Hina walked in front of the black-robed man and pointed the military dagger in her hand at his head. Her crimson eyes shone with determination. If my brother is a monster, then let me be a monster too. Her words that were not confused made the black-robed man tremble all over. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! The black-robed man roared in a low voice. Why is it that man? Why is it always that man? What's so good about that man? Why do you all see him in a different light? The roar that was full of hatred and resentment made Hina narrow her eyes. Did this guy have some kind of grudge against her brother? Just as Hina was thinking this, another voice that was different from anyone else's suddenly sounded. How surprising, I didn't expect you to still be alive. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened. Chapter 2103. The ceiling of the building that was engulfed in flames had already begun to collapse, causing thick smoke to fill the entire space. It was extremely uncomfortable. However, regardless of whether it was Tina, Li Qingyin, Leech Binet Jr., or the black-robed man, none of them cared about this. Everyone's eyes widened slightly. When they finally reacted, they turned their heads abruptly and looked towards the source of the sound. They saw that on one of the windows that was engulfed in flames, a figure had unknowingly appeared there. He sat on the windowsill, ignoring the surrounding flames as a pair of deep, dark eyes met everyone's gaze. You've grown up, Tina. Brother. The crimson color in Tina's eyes instantly disappeared, and they returned to their original color. The coldness that Tina had been carrying since the beginning of the battle had disappeared without a trace, and was replaced by excitement. He's actually back? Li Qingyin's expression changed abruptly under his mask. Father. Li Qingying Jr. seemed to have awakened a terrifying memory, and for the first time, she called out to Li Qingying for help. Only the black-robed man's body trembled the moment he saw the person who had arrived. In the next moment, a roar filled with resentment and hatred rang out. Noah Dole. Driven by resentment and hatred, the black-robed man suddenly leaped up. His figure shot out violently, and he rushed in the direction of Noah with an astonishing frenzy. Brother! Only then did Tina snap back to her senses. She looked at the black-robed figure charging toward Noah, and her eyes turned crimson again as she arched her petite body without any hesitation. Just as Tina was about to rush out, a voice stopped her. Tina, don't do anything. Noah leaped down from the windowsill and landed on the ground. Looking at the black-robed man who was rushing towards him like a madman, the corners of his mouth curled up with a hint of mockery and coldness. I'd like to see how much you've improved compared to 3 years ago, you undying bastard. After saying that, Noah did not dodge. He just stood there, looking at the black-robed man rushing towards him with a faint smile. This performance naturally caused the black-robed man's resentment and hatred to become even more violent. You're courting death. The black-robed man suddenly roared, his speed becoming even more astonishing as he rushed towards Noah. Then the black-robed man raised his tightly clenched fist, bringing with it the sound of the wind, and punching towards Noah's head. That punch carried with it a strong gust of wind that blew out the raging flames that were burning within a radius of a few meters. The sound of the explosion was extremely ear-piercing, telling everyone how astonishing the power of this punch was. Unfortunately, in the face of this astonishing blow that was like a cannonball, Noah only narrowed his eyes, raised his hand and punched out. Boom! When the two extremely ordinary-looking fists collided together, accompanied by a heavy muffled sound, a circle of powerful impacts suddenly spread out, shattering the ground, causing cracks to spread out like a spider web with Noah and the black-robed man as the center. However, the ground wasn't the only thing that cracked. In the split second when the two collided, the black-robed man's gloved fist also issued a cracking sound, and the entire sleeve of his arm was shattered into pieces by the shockwave. Hidden under the sleeves was an arm that had a metallic luster. It was an arm completely made of pure black metal, flashing with faint blue light patterns. Noah had only seen such an arm on one person. That was Rentaro. In the absence of gravity, using holmium as the base, and then mixing in rare and ordinary metals to create an artificial arm made of a next-generation alloy with a hardness and melting point several times higher than holmium, Noah opened his palm and held the super holmium metal arm tightly, and smiled at the black-robed man. You crawled back from hell, and this is what you get? After that, Noah suddenly turned around and kicked the black-robed man heavily. Clank! The powerful kick landed on the black-robed man's chest, and it still caused a crisp sound like the collision of steel. However, the force of the kick actually hit the black-robed man's body, and the black-robed man flew backward, his feet rubbing against the ground, and he slid all the way back. However, before that, Noah reached out a hand and grabbed the black-robed man's black robe. With a tearing sound, the black-robed man's black robe was torn to shreds. It wasn't until the person in the black robe slid all the way out that everyone present finally saw the person's true appearance under the black robe. However, when she saw the black-robed man's full face, Tina's scarlet eyes narrowed. If Tina, Rentaro, and Li Qingying were all mechanical soldiers of the new human creation project, then in front of this man they could all throw their identities as mechanical soldiers into the trash can. This was because no one was more suitable to be a mechanical soldier than the black-robed man in front of them. As a mechanical soldier of the new human creation project, Tina only had a chip implanted in her brain, and Li Qingying had an imaginary device installed in his body. Even though there were mechanical parts in his body, he was undoubtedly a human. Even Rentaro only had his right hand, right leg, and left eye replaced with super holmium metal prosthetics. The man in front of them was a true mechanical soldier. There wasn't an inch of skin on his body, only pure black super holmium metal. Even the head was made entirely out of super holmium metal. The face was clearly a mannequin. It was a life form made entirely out of metal. However, from the man's metal face, Tina could still recognize a person in her memory. You are. Tina gasped in shock. Yoshihito. This name wasn't very well known. However, as long as it was a guild member who had joined Fairy Tail 3 years ago, they would definitely recognize this person. This was because 3 years ago, the captain of the Son of Heaven's Guard team had a grudge against Noah. He buried hundreds of bombs in Fairy Tail, causing Noah to be completely disappointed in the people of Tokyo. He was the main culprit behind the decision to not participate in the Third Battle of Tokyo. How could this be? Tina was truly shocked. Undoubtedly, you were executed by my brother in front of everyone in Tokyo. It wasn't just an execution. When he killed Yoshihito, Noah used anti-tank bullets and blew up Yoshihito's entire head. Logically speaking, Yoshihito should be dead. There was no way he could come back to life. Yeah, I've already died once. The metal on Yoshihito's face wriggled like real muscles, causing Yoshihito's face to distort as he roared with extreme resentment. My entire head was blown up. I couldn't even feel pain. I couldn't even beg for mercy. In front of so many people, I was shot to death and became like this. If it wasn't for the fragments of my brain remaining, I wouldn't even be able to come back to life. No, even if there are fragments of your brain remaining, there is no way to come back to life. This is something even a child knows. Noah casually threw away the fragments of the black robe in his hand. As if he had seen through all of Yoshihito's secrets, he spoke indifferently. I'm afraid that someone injected the virus of a protozoan into your brain fragments. Relying on the protozoan's amazing regenerative ability, it allowed your brain to recover, then created a super Holmia metal body, and put your head in it. That's how you successfully came back to life, right? Yoshihito's distorted face began to twitch. Obviously, Noah's words completely hit the nail on the head. Now, your brain has been transformed into a protozoan, and your body is also mechanized. There are no human parts to speak of. Noah smiled sarcastically. You didn't come back to life, you just became a monster. Chapter 2104. Noah's words pierced deeply into Zhuowei's heart, causing blood to rush to his head. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Zhuowei roared crazily. I'll definitely kill you. Just as Zhuowei was about to charge out again, a hand gripped his shoulder tightly. Unfortunately, it's almost time. Li Qingyin pressed down on his cracked mask with one hand and pressed down on Zhuoren's shoulder with the other as he spoke in an unquestionable tone. The attack should have already begun. If we continue to stay here, we'll just be digging our own graves. Zhuowei glared angrily at Li Qingyin. However, Zhuowei's angry glare was met with a murderous glare from Li Qingyin under his mask. If you don't want to listen to me, I don't mind making you listen to me. That deep and emotionless voice made Zhuowei's heart tremble slightly. Although Zhuowei had been modified into a mechanical soldier, and was no longer an incompetent weakling like 3 years ago, Zhuowei was still no match for Li Qingyin. After all, Zhuowei was different from Zhuowei, who only relied on his mechanical soldier's super Holmia metal body to fight. Not only could Li Qingyin skillfully use the virtual device in his body, but his combat skills were also quite powerful. Zhuowei could not compare to him. Zhuowei was just an incompetent captain of the security team. He was not like Li Qingyin, who had killed countless people in his life. He was extremely cruel and even tried to destroy the world. It was impossible for Zhuowei not to be afraid in the face of such a crazy person. Zhuowei could only unwillingly lower his arm and roar at Noah with a twisted face. Remember, one day, I'll kill you with my own hands. After saying that, Li Qingyin grabbed Zhuoren with one hand and leaped into the blazing sea of fire with Leech Little Binet, disappearing without a trace. Wait! Tina wanted to chase after them, but Noah stopped her again. Don't worry about them. We'll deal with them later, Noah said. What's important now is mugging. Let's go there first. Young Mistress Mugging? Tina was first taken aback before coming to a realization. Could it be? That's right, their mission was to lure you away. You've fallen into their trap. Noah turned his head and looked in the direction of the sacred residence. Mugging should have suffered a real attack. It's more important to rush there now. It was just as Noah had thought. After Tina was lured away by Zhuoren, Ingen the Leech, and Binet the Leech, a group of people attacked the holy abode. Bang 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 bang. Amidst the chaotic gunfire, a group of people wearing bulletproof vests and gas masks were hiding behind cars, trees, and all kinds of cover, firing in the direction of the holy residence. The guards of the holy residence were fighting back. They used the entire holy residence as cover, holding guns and constantly shooting at the terrorist troops. Compared to 3 years ago, Holy Sun had obviously spent a lot of effort on the guards. The guards today were not as incompetent as they were 3 years ago. Although they were caught off guard, they still organized an effective counterattack and firmly blocked the terrorists outside the holy residence. Among them, Xiashi also held a submachine gun and constantly pulled the trigger, letting the bullets rain out like raindrops, restraining the terrorists' footsteps. Behind Xiashi, Mugging calmly held a knife, and beside her was Holy Sun. Bang! A grenade was thrown over, but it was shot by Xiashi. It exploded in midair, setting off a strong wave of fire and impact. However, this grenade completely tilted the battle in the direction of the terrorists. As if they were inspired, the terrorists threw grenades one after another. Bang 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 bang. Explosions sounded one after another, blowing up the guards of the holy residence one after another. Some were even blown away by the waves of fire and impact, rolling on the ground in a sorry state and crying out. Under the powerful firepower attack, the terrorists finally came out from behind the cover. Like an army, one by one, they approached Mugging and Holy Sun. Miss Mugging. Xiashi did not panic, but looked at Mugging calmly. President Tiantong. Holy Sun tightly held his hands in front of him and cast his gaze on Mugging. Under the gaze of Xiashi and Holy Sun, Mugging only slowly put her hand on the hilt of the knife, and her eyes began to become sharp. Just as the knife ghost was about to show his power, an accident happened. Poochie! A strange sound suddenly sounded. In the terrorist group that came out in full force, the head of the attacker who rushed at the front suddenly exploded, splashing a large amount of blood and brain matter, and slowly falling to the ground. The sudden sacrifice caused the entire terrorist group to subconsciously stop in their tracks. However, the moment they stopped, the terrorist doomsday also arrived. Shio 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 shio. Sniper bullets suddenly cut through the air, with a sharp sound that surpassed the speed of sound, fiercely attacking point one by one. The terrorists' heads were shot through by the sniper bullets, and with the last cry of their lives, they fell to the ground and lost consciousness forever. The group of terrorists had no way to find where the enemy was and suddenly panicked. However, the sniper bullets that brought death continued, and the terrorists fell one by one. Pools of blood stained the ground red. Seeing this scene, Mugging breathed a sigh of relief and smiled slightly. Looks like Tina made it in time. Obviously, when the attack came and Tina did not appear, Mugging had already guessed that Tina was lured away by someone else. Now, Tina had obviously defeated the interferer and joined the battle. Apart from Tina, there was no one else in Mugging's memory who was able to hit their target with a 100% accuracy rate. Moreover, Mugging had already discovered that Tina's Sandfeld had moved here and was investigating the scene. There was no clearer signal than this. Tina made it in time? Xiashi seemed to be relieved. Then there's no problem. They both belonged to the Fairy Tale Guild, and he was Tina's closest playmate, so no one knew how terrifying Tina's strength was better than Xiashi. To put it bluntly, if Tina was willing, even if she were to attack a large country, it would only be a matter of time before the country was destroyed, unless there was someone who had also reached the level of domain in the country. Even if it was close combat, which was her weakest point, the current Tina could easily defeat almost all of the cursed children. Once she went into sniping, which she was most proficient in, she was truly invincible. Therefore, in Xiaxi's opinion, since Tina had made it in time, then there was no problem. However, the Holy Sun who had been protected all this time shook his head. No, it's not over yet. Yes, it was not over yet. Because even though the terrorists were panicking after the unimaginable sniping, they still did not retreat. What did this mean? It meant that the terrorists were not willing to give up the attack, but it meant that they still had methods that they had not used yet. This thought was confirmed in the next second. Tisk, there's no other way. A guy who looked like the leader of the terrorists took out a communication device and shouted into it. Release that. Just as the leader of the terrorists finished speaking, a military helicopter flew over from midair. That's... Mugging and the Holy Sun seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions changed slightly. Xiashi focused his attention on another place. That was a large metal box that the military helicopter was carrying. The military helicopter that flew above the holy residence directly released the steel rope that was holding the metal box, and the huge metal box fell from mid-air and landed heavily on the ground. "Quick!" the leader of the terrorists hurriedly ordered. "Open it." A few of the terrorists immediately ran around the metal box and pressed the combination lock. At this moment, Mugging the Holy Sun and Xia Shi had an ominous feeling in their hearts. Chapter 2105. No one knew if Tina had the same bad premonition as everyone else, but a few sniper bullets immediately pierced through the air and shot the terrorists who were gathered around the combination lock, sending them to hell. "Go again. Go again. All of you go." The terrorist leader shouted in a voice that didn't sound rational at all, ordering the terrorists to go forward one after another, rushing to the side of the large metal box as if their lives depended on it. They operated the combination lock in an attempt to open the metal box. With so many sacrifices, the last password was finally pressed. Gotcha! Along with such a sound, the linked parts of the large metal box suddenly separated, as if disintegrating, falling in all directions. What? Seeing everything in the large metal box, Mugging Elysian and Xia Shi all gasped in shock. Bang! A sturdy leg came out of the iron box and landed heavily on the ground, causing a rumbling sound and a cloud of dust to rise. A huge creature walked out step by step, exposing its full appearance to everyone's vision. Looking at the behemoth, all the guards of the holy abode widened their eyes, the blood draining from their faces. Mugging Elysian and Xia Shi also looked at the huge figure, falling into shock. In a word, it was a protozoan. However, it wasn't a normal protozoan. At least, normal protozoans definitely didn't have such a huge body. Its height was more than 10 meters. The length of its neck took up 3/4 of its height. Its head was the appearance of a standard reptile. Its body was like an elephant. Although its tail wasn't as long as its neck, it was still much longer than its body, and was very heavy. When it landed on the ground, even a casual drag could crush the ground. Its appearance was simply like a long-necked dinosaur from the dinosaur era. Its 4 thick legs stomping heavily, causing the ground to tremble. However, its skin wasn't as smooth and thick as a long-necked dinosaur's. Instead, it was filled with pore-like lumps, looking extremely disgusting. Ooh! Then, the long-necked protozoan let out a roar that shook the air. The roar even formed a storm, blowing away everything in the surroundings towards Mugging, Xia Shi, and the Holy Son of Heaven. Mugging, Xia Shi, and Shang Tianzi all had different reactions when they saw the huge protozoa. Stage 3. No. It's definitely a stage for protozoan. Mugging's expression was a little ugly. How could this be? Elysian Son of Heaven was in disbelief. They actually managed to transport protozoa in here? Xia Shi gripped his submachine gun tightly, his expression constantly changing. The three of them did not expect that in order to achieve the goal, the terrorists behind the scenes actually secretly transported the primitive animals to the Tokyo area and brazenly threw them into the attack. That was no joke. The protozoa themselves were not scary, but that was another matter altogether. The most important thing was that if one was attacked by a protozoa, there was a high chance that one would be infected with the protozoa virus, causing many people to turn into protozoa. If it was not handled well and the protozoa virus spread in the Tokyo area, it would definitely be a disaster. In order to kill me, they didn't hesitate to drag the entire Tokyo area into the water and involve the innocent people. Mugging gripped the handle of the katana at her waist, her gaze becoming fierce. A bunch of incorrigible bastards. Elysian Son of Heaven's expression also became somewhat sorrowful, closing his eyes as if he was praying to God. Under such circumstances, the terrorist leader pointed in Mugging's direction and actually ordered the protozoa. Kill her. Hearing that, the long-necked protozoan turned its long neck and turned its eyes to Mugging, a murderous glint appearing in its eyes. Ooh! The next moment, the long-necked protozoan actually obeyed the terrorist leader's order and moved its thick but short legs, running wildly in Mugging's direction. Dong 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 dong! The earth-shaking footsteps echoed in the surroundings, causing the entire holy residence to tremble. Lord Elysian Son of Heaven! Mugging and Xia Shi chose to protect Elysian Son of Heaven at the same time, one on the left and one on the right, dashing in front of Elysian Son of Heaven, one on the left and the other on the right, one in a battle stance, the other holding up a submachine gun. Fire! Fire! The holy residence guards also reacted, suppressing the fear in their hearts. One by one they raised their guns. Don't even think about it. The terrorist leader led the remaining terrorists and also raised their weapons, once again starting a gunfight with the holy residence guards. The protozoa in the shape of the long-necked protozoa, under the cover of the terrorists, roared while charging in the direction of Mugging and the others like a tank. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of a bullet piercing through the air was heard. The powerful sniper bullet pierced through the air and landed on the head of the long-necked protozoa. Bang! The head of the long-necked protozoa was directly blown apart by the powerful anti-tank sniper bullet, spilling a large amount of blood and flesh. It was extremely gory. The long-necked protozoa's charge was stopped. Good job, Tina. Mugung and Xiaoshi smiled in unison. Unfortunately, in the next moment, Mugging and Xiaoshi's smiles froze. Gurgle, gurgle. In a creepy squirming sound, the flesh on the neck of the long-necked protozoa suddenly bulged out. In the next second, the head of the long-necked protozoa returned to its original state, roaring loudly. Seeing this scene clearly, whether it was Mugging Xiaoshi or the Holy Sun, all of them were shocked. Holmium is ineffective. The metal that could weaken the activity of the protozoa's virus, causing protozoa to lose their regenerative ability holmium. It was because of this metal that humans obtained the means to effectively kill protozoa and were able to survive. However, the long-necked protozoa in front of them had regenerated after suffering a fatal injury. No one would think that Tina's sniping would not use holmium bullets when the enemy was a protozoa. In this case, there was only one explanation that could explain the phenomenon before them. Holmium was ineffective. Is that protozoa's regenerative ability very high? At the top of a building far away, Tina, who was aiming and shooting, could not help but be speechless. For a moment she could not snipe anymore. A stage for protozoan was a calamitous existence for ordinary people, and even ordinary police officers. A person who had the ability to deal with a stage for protozoa alone, even if it was the initiator of the cursed child, had to be at least in the top 100 of the IP ranking. However, Tina was the strongest initiator. She had the ability to deal with the stage V zodiacal protozoa alone, let alone a stage for protozoa. However, that was under the condition that the attack method was effective. If holmium was ineffective against protozoa, then even if it could be defeated, the opponent would immediately recover. There was nothing that could be done. Therefore, the expressions of Mugging Xiaoshi and Tina, who was sniping at the top of a building far away, became solemn. The Holy Sun, on the other hand, had a face full of worry. He clenched his fists tighter and tighter as he kept praying. The Holy Sun's prayer was obviously successful. Whoosh! Just as the long-necked dragon was roaring wantonly, the sharp sound of something breaking through the air rang out again. However, this time it was not a bullet that caused the sound of something breaking through the air, but a person. A figure suddenly rushed over from the distant horizon. Like a meteor, it cut through the air and shot in front of the long-necked dragon. Then it threw a punch. Boom! When the meteorite-like punch landed on the body of the long-necked dinosaur, the terrifying force impacted the huge body of the stage for protozoan and spread out. The long-necked dragon's roar didn't even have time to fall before its entire body exploded under the astonishing punch. Pieces of flesh mixed with a large amount of blood fell to the ground one by one like a large piece of trash. The figure that descended from the sky slowly landed, accompanied by huge pieces of meat and crimson blood. Then it landed on the ground. Mugung and Xiaoshijun fell into a daze as if they had not reacted to what had happened. The Holy Sun was also stunned. However, when he saw the full appearance of the figure that landed on the ground, his beating heart suddenly stopped. At the same time, Noah raised his head and met the Holy Sun's gaze. Time stopped. Chapter 2106. Perhaps it was just an illusion. However, at this moment, everything in the world seemed to have disappeared, leaving only a man and a woman looking at each other. Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven looked at each other, and they could clearly see the emotions in each other's eyes. Of course, Noah did not know what kind of emotions were in his eyes at this moment. Noah only knew that in the eyes of the pure and holy girl, all kinds of emotions were clearly revealed. In those eyes there was disbelief. In those eyes there was disbelief. In those eyes there was an extremely strong joy. In that pair of eyes there was an unprecedented emotion of excitement. Although all of this was only shown in those watery eyes, Noah undoubtedly felt it for nothing. 3 years was like one day. With just one look, Noah could confirm that the pure and holy girl in front of him was still the same as the head of state who confessed in front of him 3 years ago. She had not changed at all. At the very least, the feelings in the deepest part of his heart would be completely revealed with just this look in his eyes. Thus, Noah's expression unknowingly softened. Only at this moment did Mugung and Xiaoshi react. Looking at Noah, the shock on their faces turned into shock, and then into joy. Noah! President! Hearing Mugung and Xiaoshi's call, Noah retracted his gaze from the Holy Son of Heaven and turned to the two girls. However, the current situation was clearly not suitable for reminiscing. How? How is this possible? The terrorist leader, who had witnessed the entire process of the long-necked dragon being killed, let out a trembling voice, as if he was hysterical. Hey! Move for me! Move for me! You haven't completed your mission yet. You're not allowed to die here. How much do you think it costs to nurture you? Hurry up and get up! Amidst the terrorist leader's shout, the pieces of flesh of the long-necked dragon that had been blown apart suddenly wriggled up. The surprise on Mugging and Xiaoshir's faces faded, and they became alert again. The Holy Son of Heaven also realized that this was not the time to be happy, and his face tensed up again. Even Noah frowned slightly. He looked at the pieces of wriggling flesh around him and muttered softly. Not only is he immune to qi, but his regenerative ability is also so strong. As mentioned before, there were differences in the regenerative abilities of protogut animals. Ordinary holmium weapons, which were weapons made from holmium, could kill individuals. Their regeneration ability was ranked at level 1. Most protozoa and originators belonged to this level. Those that did not belong to this level were defined as level 2. They were able to resist ordinary weapons and could only be defeated by beheading or burning them with fuel. At level 3, even the severed arm could be regenerated or returned to its original body. The cells seemed to resonate with each other. Level 4 meant that even if it lost most of its internal organs, it could still regenerate. If one wanted to kill it, they would have to destroy it completely. Level 5 meant that even if the target was thrown into an extremely low temperature, vacuum or magma of thousands of degrees, as long as it adapted to the environment, it could regenerate. Moreover, it was a molecular level regeneration. Other than super holmium items, no physical means could kill it. Since the giraffe was immune to qi and could move even if it was bombed into pieces, its regeneration ability must be at least level 3. Not only is it a stage 4 protozoa, but its regeneration level has also reached level 3? Noah cast his gaze on the terrorist leader and narrowed his eyes slightly. This protozoa, that guy was really commanding it just now, right? Let alone a stage 4 protozoa. Even a stage I protozoa had never been heard of taking orders from a human. However, the terrorist leader had successfully ordered the stage 4 giraffe to attack. Leech Shadow Een Threat Protector and stage 4 protozoa. All of them are cards that ordinary people can't have. Noah was deep in thought. Looks like the attack this time wasn't as simple as the rulers of various countries not being able to tolerate the existence of fairy tale. With this thought, Noah looked at Xiaoshi. Xiaoshi, you have incendiary bombs on you, right? It was just a short sentence, but Xiaoshi had already understood. The next moment, Xiaoshi took out a few incendiary bombs from his waist, pulled out the safety pin, and threw them directly at the giraffe's flesh. Bang 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 bang. Following the sound of explosions, the incendiary bombs exploded and set off bursts of fire. The entire vast space in front of the holy abode was engulfed in flames. The fire engulfed the wriggling flesh of the long-necked dragon, slowly burning. Under the burning of the fire, the giraffe's flesh was gradually roasted to a crisp. Finally, it stopped moving and turned into ashes in the fire. It's over. The terrorist leader let out a voice of despair. At this time, Tina's sniping began again, shooting down all the terrorists one by one. Looking at this scene, the terrorist leader knew that it was over. He. Extremely abruptly, the terrorist leader began to laugh neurotically. It's okay, it's okay. The terrorist leader let out a voice that made one's hair stand on end. Even if we fail this time, next time we will definitely succeed. In the end, the world will definitely belong to us, to our 5 Xiang Association. Five Xiang Association? Meng and Shang Tianzi both had a reaction to this name. Five Xiang Association? Noah was slightly startled. Noah had never heard of this name before. Just as Noah was slightly startled, the terrorist leader suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it at his throat. Wait! Meng and Shang Tianzi exclaimed in unison. But at this time it was already too late to stop it. Bang! The sound of the gunshot echoed clearly in the sky above the blazing holy abode. The terrorist leader slowly fell to the ground. A large amount of blood flowed out from his throat and dyed the ground red. Meng and Shang Tianzi opened their mouths slightly. In the end, they sighed and chose to remain silent. Noah's brows furrowed once again. Ignoring the raging flames, he directly stepped forward and came in front of the terrorist leader. He squatted down and removed the other party's gas mask. What appeared in Noah's field of vision was an extremely ordinary middle-aged man. Of course, Noah didn't recognize this middle-aged man. His gaze stayed on the middle-aged man's face for a while. Noah then turned to the middle-aged man's body and began to inspect. Suddenly, Noah discovered that there seemed to be a mark on the middle-aged man's neck. Raising his eyebrows, Noah directly reached out and tore off the middle-aged man's bulletproof vest. He looked at his neck. The mark on the middle-aged man's neck was nothing else but a tattoo. A pentagram tattoo decorated with a pair of feathers. A pentagram tattoo decorated with feathers. Noah whispered. Five Xiang Association? Noah didn't know what this so-called Five Xiang Association was. However, from the fact that the other party's members could control protozoa, it was definitely not an ordinary organization. Moreover, this organization was very likely to have people who could carry out the transformation surgery of the new human creation plan. If this wasn't the case, then Thretua wouldn't have become a mechanical soldier. I'm afraid that it's not an ordinary person who can carry out the transformation surgery of the new human creation plan, right? After all, it might not be too difficult to inject a brain fragment into a protozoan virus and restore it, but it was definitely not as easy as it sounded to fit a restored brain into a mechanized body, allowing the brain to smoothly drive the entire mechanized body and maintain its rationality and thought processes. In addition, Li Qingyin also appeared and moved together with Thretua, who was reborn. This so-called Five Xiang Association was definitely not ordinary. Of course, whether or not Thretua was a member of the Five Xiang Association still needed to be proven. Perhaps like Li Qingyin, who was once employed by the Heavenly Chrysanthemum, Thretua was only hired by the Five Xiang Association and became the other party's hired thug. In this case, whether or not the person who helped Thretua with the transformation was a member of the Five Xiang Association also needed to be carefully considered. I just came back, and there are already a lot of things to do. Chapter 2107. The ambush came to an end just like that. In front of the Holy Abode's plaza, the Holy Abode's guards were organizing people to put out the fire, gradually extinguishing the flames that Xia had ignited with the incendiary bombs. Noah, Meng, Elysian, and Xia, along with Tina, re-entered the Holy Abode's guest hall. Seriously, where have you been these 3 years? Meng put her hands on her hips and threw a tantrum at Noah, as if she was accusing him. You haven't made a single call, you haven't sent back a single message, even your whereabouts are a complete mystery. Even the guild's intelligence department didn't have a clue, and the various countries in the world couldn't find a trace of you. Those who don't know would really think that you were swallowed by some protozoan. When Meng was throwing a tantrum, Xia and Tina also stood on his left and right, and they had no intention of mediating at all. They looked at Noah with one of their eyes full of blame and the other full of indignation. 3 years ago, no matter whether it was Xia or Tina, although they were both frigid and muddle-headed, the only thing they had in common was that they were very close to Noah, and very clingy to Noah. But now neither Xia nor Tina spoke up for Noah, clearly worried that Noah had really met with some mishap, which was why they were so angry when they saw him again. Even the more docile Elysian chose not to speak up for Noah at this time, only sitting there, staring at Noah, as if waiting for Noah to give an explanation. In response, Noah could only smile bitterly. Am I not back now? That one sentence caused the expressions of all the girls to become a little colder. I say, President Noah, Meng said with a fake smile. Do you know that your words make you sound like a heartless man? You've been wandering around outside for so long, And that's the only explanation you can come back with? What heartless man. Noah rolled his eyes. You're not my wives. I'm just a hands-off boss, right? Xiaoshi and Tina glanced at each other upon hearing this, and the holy heavenly child's expression became even more indescribable. Meanwhile, Mu Gung exploded. It's because you've become a hands-off manager that I've had to work so hard for the past 3 years. Mugging slammed his hands on the table in front of Noah and glared at Noah. You know I'm not your wife, and yet you've thrown your home to me to take care of. Do you think it's easy for me to help you build a fairyland? Okay. I know you've worked hard. I'll definitely give you a satisfactory compensation later, okay? Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he pressed Muging's shoulder and pushed her back to her seat. What's the matter? Let's talk about it at home, okay? Not your wife's housekeeper. Noah's teasing words made Mugging grit her teeth in anger. Tina, Xiaoshi, you've worked hard too. Noah turned to the two girls and reached out to pat their heads. I'm sorry for throwing so many things at you. Under Noah's affectionate gesture, the resentment in Tina and Xiaoshi's hearts dissipated quite a bit, replaced by the attachment to Noah that had been hidden deep in their hearts for the past 3 years. Please don't say that, brother. Tina smiled at Noah. You've changed my fate as a dirty assassin, and let me find a true home. Compared to the shameful work I've done before, the things I've done in the past 3 years really aren't hard at all. Think so too. Xiaoshi's expression didn't change, but his eyes were fixed on Noah. If it weren't for the president, I might have died long ago, not to mention getting a new life. I'm very satisfied with my current life, and I don't think it's hard at all. That's good. Noah patted Tina and Xiaoshi's heads affectionately. I'll have a good chat with you later. Now let me talk about business. With that, Noah glanced at Holy Son of Heaven. Sensing Noah's gaze, Holy Son of Heaven immediately understood that Noah's words were also directed at him, and his heartbeat quickened. What? Only Mugging threw a tantrum. I'm just complaining, I'm not really blaming him. Looking at Mugging's tantrum, Noah really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When he saw Mugging on TV, Noah thought that this orphan of the Tentong family had changed a lot, and compared to 3 years ago she was much more mature in all aspects. Now Noah knew that in fact, although this girl was mature, some aspects still hadn't changed. It was exactly the same as 3 years ago. Okay. Noah became serious and asked such a sentence. What is that Wuxia association? Everyone restrained the expression on their faces and became serious. Then Mugging spoke. Actually, we don't know the origin of this so-called Wuxia association. You don't know. Noah was a little stunned. Undoubtedly, when the terrorist leader mentioned the Wuxia association, Mugging and Holy Son of Heaven had a reaction. How could they not know the origin of the other party? Holy Son of Heaven didn't know if he saw what Noah was thinking, but he said so. The reason why President Tentong and I know the existence of the Wuxia Association is because since a year ago, the members of this organization have been active in various countries around the world, and they have been carrying out unknown criminal actions. Moreover, our guild and the Wuxia Association have had many conflicts in this year, which caused us a lot of losses. Mugging continued Holy Son of Heaven's words. I tried my best to get the intelligence department to collect information on this organization, but the information collected was very limited. At present, I only know that the members of this organization have pentagrams decorated with feathers on their bodies. Moreover, the more feathers they have, the higher their status in the organization. Mugging's words reminded Noah of the tattoo branded on the terrorist leader's neck. He remembered that the tattoo seemed to be decorated with a pair of feathers. In other words, the terrorist leader's level in the Wuxia Association was 2 wings, which was only 1 level higher than the most basic member. Is there no way to confirm who is behind this organization? Noah asked. Do you only know the organization's hierarchy and member characteristics? There is no way to confirm, at least for now. The person behind the Wuxia Association has not been confirmed. Mugging replied. The only information that can be confirmed is that the top operatives in this organization have 5 wings tattooed on their body, and it seems that there is more than one person. Other than that, there is no way to confirm the authenticity of the information. There is no way to confirm the authenticity of the information. Noah closed his eyes, then immediately opened them again, and asked very abruptly. Then, in this information, Is there a part of the highest person in charge related to the mechanized soldier project? The highest person in charge related to the mechanized soldier project? The girls suddenly froze. In order to fight against protozoa, the plan to use the power of Ryum to create the strongest soldiers, the mechanized soldier project. The highest people in charge of this project were the 4 scientists who were known as having the smartest minds in the world. And these 4 scientists were the following people. The highest person in charge of the Australian branch Obelisk, Arthur Shannock. The highest person in charge of the American branch Next, Ayn Rand. The highest person in charge of the Japanese branch New Human Creation Project, Muroto Jean. And the highest person in charge of the German commander's mechanized soldier project, Albrecht Grunewald. Because they had the smartest minds in the world, these 4 people in charge of the mechanized soldier project were also known as the 4 wise men. Rintaro was the mechanical soldier created by the highest person in charge of the Japanese branch New Human Creation Project, Muroto Jean. Hina was the mechanical soldier created by the highest person in charge of the American branch Next, Ayn Rand. Therefore, the people present were no strangers to the highest person in charge of the mechanized soldier project. The question was, why did Noah ask this question? When Mugging, Shangzi, and Xiaoshi were puzzled, Hina explained for everyone. Before the attack began, the people who led me away were 2 mechanical soldiers. Mugging and Shangzi's expression changed. Chapter 2108. Both Mugging and Seiko were the supreme commanders of their respective regions. Therefore, no one knew better than Mugging and Seiko what the appearance of the 2 mechanical soldiers meant. In the past, in order to defeat the protozoa, the 4 scientists known as the 4 wise men gathered together and launched the mechanized soldier project, intending to use it to fight against the protozoa and save mankind. However, after the cursed child was confirmed, the project was disbanded. The reason was simple. It was because it cost a lot to build a mechanical soldier. Take Rintaro for example. His metal prosthetic limbs were made from suanai. Not to mention the labor required in the manufacturing process, just the suanai metal alone required a lot of money. Although suanai was only an alloy, in the current era where the protozoa were rampant, suanai was a precious metal that even protozoa with a level 5 regenerative ability had a chance of eliminating. Its value was definitely much more expensive than gold of the same amount. Just think about it. Even if gold was used to build a right hand and a right foot, it would still require a lot of money, right? If it were superalloy, which was even more valuable than gold, just the materials required to create a mechanical soldier like Rintaro's would already be extremely expensive, not to mention the labor and technology required to create it. Noah didn't even know which tycoon had the ability to spend so much money to gather so many superalloy metals and build an entire human body, transforming that useless piece of trash bodyguard Zhua into a mechanical soldier. One could only imagine how much money was needed to build a mechanical soldier. The cursed child, on the other hand, was born with power beyond the scope of human beings. In comparison, if there was a cursed child that didn't need to be cultivated, naturally no one would think that it was worthwhile to spend money on the production of mechanical soldiers. Therefore, the mechanized soldier project, which was once created by the 4 smartest minds in the world, was naturally announced as a failure. All the research institutes were disbanded, and the mechanical soldiers that had been produced were dismissed. Now, almost all of the mechanical soldiers that had been produced had become facilitators, leading powerful initiators to form police partners. In the IP ranking, most of the facilitators among the high-ranking police partners were mechanical soldiers. Li Qingyin, for example, had been ranked 134th on the IP rankings a few years ago. Now, he was almost in the top 30. Take Rintaro for example. After 3 years of hard work and training, he was now ranked 7th on the IP rankings. He was definitely much stronger than before. Tina, on the other hand, had combined the 2 superpowers of the cursed child and the mechanical soldiers, making her the strongest initiator. Under such circumstances, the Wuxiang Association was able to send out 2 mechanical soldiers. Either they were hired like the Celestial Chrysanthemum Prime Minister, or the organization has one of the 4 sages. Mugging frowned and looked at Noah. It's very likely that they're just hired. Indeed, most people would think that way, Noah said coolly. However, among the 2 mechanical soldiers, one of them is an excellent bodyguard. Mu Geng and Xia Shixian were first stunned and then stood up in surprise. The Holy Son of Heaven was even more stunned and at a loss of what to do. After all, the bodyguard was once the captain of the Holy Son of Heaven's bodyguard team. Moreover, he was the culprit that caused Noah to not participate in the Third Battle of Tokyo, and almost caused the Tokyo area to be destroyed by the Protozoa army. Therefore, if it was just a name, I believe that no one would forget this guy. Especially the Holy Son of Heaven. He saw Noah kill the bodyguard right in front of him. So you're saying that the bodyguard survived because he was mechanized? The Holy Son of Heaven clenched his hands and looked at Noah. You suspect that it was the people from the Wuxia Association who mechanized the bodyguard and used him as a combat force in this attack? Otherwise, now that the plan has stopped, no one would continue to produce mechanical soldiers out of the original intention of saving humanity, right? Noah glanced at Tina's direction. The person in charge of America's Next restarted the plan without permission and even sent the cursed child to the operating table to create a mechanical soldier that was more powerful than a pure human. But he's already dead. Tina lowered her head and fell silent. Noah reached out and patted Tina's head in silent consolation before continuing. Don't worry. As for the bodyguard Zhuo, he was killed by me 3 years ago. Now that he has reappeared as a mechanical soldier, it must be one of the four sages who initiated the plan without permission and threw him into the attack launched by the Five Xiang Association. Therefore, I think that there is a possibility that one of the four sages is in the Five Xiang Association. Mugging and the Holy Son of Heaven looked at each other and fell into a state of shock. Only Xia Shi, the cursed child who was known as the think tank, said this in the face of Noah's speculation. President, do you think that the person in charge of Japan's new human creation plan, Mugging Jean, is also a suspect? I don't know. Noah shook his head and looked at the Holy Son of Heaven. However, 3 years ago, Rentaro told me that Mugging Jean was in the Tokyo area. Now that 3 years have passed, Mugging Jean should still be in the Tokyo area, right? As soon as he said this, everyone's eyes were focused on the Holy Son of Heaven. Under everyone's gaze, the Holy Son of Heaven calmed down after the initial panic and nodded at Noah. Dr. Mugging is indeed still in the Tokyo area. According to the information, Ridaro-san's prosthetic arm and Ms. Tina Sprinter's reconnaissance aircraft were both maintained by Dr. Mugging. Yes. Tina nodded and confirmed the Holy Son of Heaven's words. My Sandfeld was indeed maintained by Dr. Mugging, so I would meet with Dr. Mugging every once in a while. The same goes for Ridaro-san. Indeed, Ridaro-san used to meet with Dr. Mugging regularly. Although I have never met Dr. Mugging, I have heard a lot of rumors from Ridaro-san, Mugging said hesitantly. As far as I know, although Dr. Mugging is a little weird, he shouldn't be the kind of person who would do unspeakable things. That's what I thought too, big brother. Tina turned to Noah with a serious expression. I don't think Dr. Mugging is a suspect. Even if he's not a suspect, Mugging must know more about the other people in charge of the plan than us, Noah said. So, I think it's necessary to meet with Dr. Mugging. Everyone pondered for a while and then nodded. All right. Noah thought of something and said to the Holy Son of Heaven. In the attack just now, the body of the long-necked dragon wasn't completely burned. Get someone to collect a small part of it and burn the rest. Also, collect the firearms and ammunition used by the terrorists. Hearing Noah's words, Elysian immediately understood what he meant. You want Dr. Mugging to analyze the long-necked dragon? That's right. There are some things that are worth paying attention to, Noah said with a shrug. As for the firearms and ammunition collected, I'll get the young lady of the Sima family to analyze it for me. What? Mugging stood up abruptly and shouted at Noah. You're going to ask Wei Weaver? Is there a need to be so surprised? Noah's mouth twitched. After all, it's a matter of weapons. Isn't it natural to ask the young lady of the world's largest weapons company? I don't agree. Mugging grabbed Noah's shoulder and shook it desperately. Listen, Noah, you can't go see that snake woman. You finally came back. I don't want you to disappear again. Why would I disappear if I go see Wei Weaver? Isn't that obvious? That snake woman will definitely eat you alive. She's not a scourge. No, she's a scourge, the most ferocious scourge in the world. If you come into contact with her, you will be infected and become one of her kind. Isn't that cursing Wei Weaver as a primitive animal? That's why you can't go see her. I've already posted a request in the guild for the S-class police to deal with that monster. It's okay, it'll be over soon. What do you think the guild is? Chapter 2109. Noah had to repeat again that mugging really didn't change at all. Even if the childishness on the outside had completely faded and he became very mature, the inner childishness was still retained. It had been 3 years, but when it came to Unweaver, mugging still had a bitter and agitated look. This made Noah really begin to doubt whether it was a wise choice to let mugging handle the guild. Noah could only be glad that now that Fairy Tale had the ability to become the world's overlord. Mugging was also entangled with all kinds of things. He was so busy that he didn't have time to care about personal grudges. Otherwise, with Mugging's hatred for Unweaver, it was really possible for him to abuse his power for personal gain and lead the entire Fairy Tale to flatten the Sima family and eliminate Unweaver. In the end, in a flurry, Hina and Xiaoshi finally stopped and planned to imprison Noah with handcuffs. They didn't want to let Noah see mugging, and because of Mugging's disturbance, the original serious business couldn't be discussed, so many problems were not mentioned. For example, during the attack, the question of how the military helicopter used by the terrorists was able to smuggle the long-necked protozoa into the Tokyo area had yet to be solved. Of course, this problem was no longer a problem that Noah and the others needed to pay attention to, but as the ruler of the Tokyo area, Shengzi needed to pay attention to it. Therefore, after Mugging's disturbance, the following matters became somewhat unimportant. Then mugging was taken away by Hina and Xiaoshi. Not sure if it was intentional, the 3 girls didn't find Noah to leave together, but let Noah stay in the holy residence alone with Shengzi. Noticing that it was suddenly 2 people alone, Shengzi lowered his head and rubbed his hands nervously. After 3 seconds he immediately surrendered. I'll let people collect the long-necked dragon's body and the terrorists' guns and ammunition. You go to my room first. After leaving such a sentence, Shengzi ran away without a trace. Noah could only smile bitterly, and according to his memory, he came to Shengzi's room. Kacha. With the slight sound of the door opening, the boudoir, which was regarded as an idol by the people in the Tokyo area, entered Noah's field of vision and was fully presented. It was a room that was no different from the image in Noah's memory. In other words, in 3 years, Shengzi's room didn't change much, and it was still exactly the same as 3 years ago, exactly the same as Noah's memory. The position of the bed didn't change. The position of the furniture didn't change. The position of the table and chairs didn't change. Even the fluttering curtain in front of the window didn't seem to change. It was still as white as 3 years. Shengzi's room, Shengzi's room, Shengzi's SS, Shengzi's right. A teat. It was a piano. Xi's teat. S. Back then, when he first came to this room, Noah was also attracted by this piano. However, it was different from now. At that time, he was only attracted because he wanted to play a song on a whim. Thinking back to that time, Noah sat down, closed his eyes, and recalled the piano skills that he hadn't used for a long time. His hands involuntarily began to play. Ding! The sound of the zither, which was as light as a bell, became the first note that Noah pressed. In the next second, an exceptionally pleasant tune began to play rhythmically, reverberating throughout the entire room. It was a song that could awaken memories. The first time he came to this room and played the piano on a whim, Noah played this song. At that time, Noah put his emotions into this song. He left the fairy tale world and established the fairy tale guild in another world. He fought against various evil forces for more than a year. At that time, Noah put his emotions into the song. He missed his hometown, missed his companions in the guild, and missed his family. Perhaps it was because of the emotional relationship at that time. The song that Noah played was undoubtedly very beautiful. Even Shengzi was attracted to it. Come to think of it, that should be the beginning of Noah's first private communication with the Holy Son of Heaven. If it wasn't for that song, perhaps Sage Son of Heaven wouldn't have had the chance to fall in love with Noah. Thinking of this, Noah once again played this song. What he put into it was not the thoughts of his hometown or his family, but the memories of the past. He recalled the first time they met, but because of a dispute due to different standpoints, that holy girl showed selflessness. He recalled that when he defeated the Scorpio constellation, but because he couldn't deal with the main culprit, Chrysanthemum Tendo, That holy girl was speechless. He recalled that when Qiwu Zhongshuan came to Tokyo for talks, but because he couldn't understand the dictator, that holy girl showed helplessness. He recalled that when the Third Battle of Tokyo broke out, but because she couldn't get his help, that holy girl showed helplessness. Also, when he was about to leave this world and start a new journey, in order to express her feelings to him, that holy girl showed shyness and reluctance. All of these, accompanied by Noah's memories, were poured into this song. Along with each syllable, each section of rhythm, they jumped in the surrounding space. After a long time, the song full of memories gradually came to an end. Noah stopped playing and opened his eyes. In the next second, Noah saw it. At the door of the room, a holy girl wearing a wedding dress stood there, both hands covering her mouth. Her cheeks were already wet, and tears kept dripping down. Seeing this scene, Noah was not surprised, nor did he panic. His heart was filled with inconceivable calmness. Standing up step by step, he walked in front of the Holy Son of Heaven. Noah stretched out his hand and gently wiped the girl's tears, gently asking, "Why are you crying?" The Holy Son of Heaven didn't answer immediately, but still let Noah wipe away her tears. After a long time, she squeezed out a voice with difficulty. "I don't know why, but I feel like crying." "You really don't know why?" Noah helped the Holy Son of Heaven wipe her tears as he said this. "Isn't it because you feel wrong to wait for me for so long? Is that why you're crying?" The Holy Son of Heaven shook her head and whispered, "I don't feel wronged. I just feel that it's great that you can come back." This one sentence expressed all the feelings in the girl's heart. Noah silently wiped away the tears on the girl's face, then reached out his hand and gently hugged the country's head of state, who was idolized by the people of Tokyo and even other regions. The Holy Son of Heaven stopped crying. Her face slightly reddened, but she didn't resist. She obediently snuggled into Noah's arms. Listening to his heartbeat, she felt an unprecedented sense of happiness spreading throughout her heart. Then Noah spoke. "Although I don't think there's a need to ask, but in order to prevent this from being just my wishful thinking, let me ask." Unfortunately, this time, the Holy Son of Heaven shook her head. "Please don't ask anything." The Holy Son of Heaven closed her eyes and said very peacefully, "Because you're definitely not wishful thinking." "Is that so?" Noah hugged the Holy Son of Heaven and whispered in her ear, "You don't regret it? I know that you have a lot of secrets, and I also know that you have a lot of things that I don't know." The Holy Son of Heaven answered without hesitation, "But even if you tell me that you're not a human, I still won't regret it." At this moment, Noah knew that it was useless to say anything more. Thus, Noah gently lifted the girl's chin, and in her slightly panicked eyes, he stole her first kiss. The helpless whimper dissipated into the air, and a second later, it turned into rapid breathing. The girl was helplessly captured by the domineering man's lips, struggling to no avail. In the end, she could only shyly close her eyes and immerse herself in the kiss. This also meant that this relationship that was delayed for 3 years finally had a result. Chapter 21:10. The day of Noah's return was undoubtedly very long. Even for Noah, he had been busy with a lot of things on this day. First, he returned to Fairyland and witnessed the heyday of fairy tale. Then he rushed to the Tokyo area and encountered Muging's attack. Then, there was the establishment of his relationship with the Holy Sun. After one thing after another, even if Noah had unlimited stamina, he still felt that this day was unusually long, and it made him feel a little tired. Especially after Noah's return, Mugging had the tendency to throw all the work that the guild leader should do back to him, making Noah feel that he had just returned but did not even have time to rest. Fortunately, due to the attack, the international conference held by the various countries was postponed to 3 days later. Otherwise, the next day, Mugging would definitely let Noah attend the conference as the true guild leader of Fairy Tale. In fact, Mugging did have such thoughts. The news of Noah's return had spread throughout Fairyland. Now, all the well-informed people already knew that the true master of Fairyland had returned. Under such circumstances, the various countries' representatives who had been on guard against Fairyland would not know that Noah had returned. Therefore, everyone began to be curious about what kind of person the guild leader of Fairy Tale, who had the ability to dominate the world, was. And was there any meaning to his return at this time? Perhaps it was because of this relationship that the various countries' representatives took the initiative to postpone the international conference. After all, in order to achieve something in the meeting, everyone needed some time to prepare in the face of Noah, who had appeared out of nowhere. They did not want to be caught off guard in the meeting when they did not know this person. In other words, although it had not been announced, almost everyone thought that Noah would attend the international conference in 3 days' time. Or rather, as the true guild leader of Fairy Tale, it would be fake if he did not attend this international conference. No matter what, anyone with a discerning eye could see that this international conference was about Fairy Tale. Therefore, it was reasonable for Noah to attend the international conference as the president. Not only did the others think so, but Mugung also thought so. Since Noah was back, it would be more appropriate to hand over the international conference to Noah. In response, Noah said helplessly, "Don't worry. Things have to be done one by one. Since the international conference is 3 days later, we have to settle the rest of the things in these 3 days." What is it? Wuxia Association. This mysterious organization that had appeared out of nowhere. It was impossible not to know about it. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Noah, as a guild leader who had the ability to dominate the entire world, would only care about these small fries if he had nothing better to do. There were so many shady organizations in the world. How could they manage all of them? This idea was not without reason. However, this so-called Wuxiang Association was definitely not some small fries. Could small fries be able to control stage 4 gastronomic animals and make use of them? Could not be, right? At least in this world, let alone Noah. Even Mugung and the Holy Sun had never seen or heard of such a method to control gastronomic animals. In other words, although this Wuxiang Association had appeared out of nowhere, it had done something that no country in the world could do. Based on this alone, Noah felt that he could not ignore this mysterious organization. Even if he did not care, Fairyland was such a large territory that he needed to protect. If he did not pay attention to it, he would lose more than he gained if he fell into a trap. If Noah, who had killed countless gods, were to suffer in the hands of a group of humans who were worse than scum, then he should really find a place to end his own life. Noah did not want to look down on a group of ants hiding in the dark. No one knew if they would suddenly crawl out and bite him. Because of this, Noah felt that he should first meet one of the strongest minds in this world. However, in order to prevent yesterday's attack from happening again, Noah needed to arrange some backup plans. In the living room of the holy residence, the Holy Sun, Mugung, Hina, and Xiashur looked at each other. In front of the group of 4 girls, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith, the 4 petite girls, stood in a line and looked at the Holy Sun and the others with the same expressionless face. Looking at the 4 little girls, the Holy Sun, Mugung, Hina, and Xiashur looked at each other. The Holy Sun was the first to speak and asked tentatively, "These children are..." Noah scratched his face and said to his 4 contracted partners, "How should I put it? Introduce yourselves." Hearing this, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith looked up at the same time. Aster said expressionlessly, "I am Master Sword." Athena said faintly, "I have some bad luck with this guy." Orpheus said concisely, "He's family with Noah." Lilith tilted her head and said directly, "Someone who has always been with Noah." The unique self-introductions did not make the crowd feel relieved. Instead, it made them look at each other in dismay once again. "Okay, my bad." Noah covered his face and said helplessly, "Just think of it as the initiator that I found in these 3 years." This was enough to explain everything. However, Hina had a reaction to this. "I can't pretend that I didn't hear this." Tina, who would become sleepy during the day due to the owl factor, instantly woke up. She took a step forward and made a sound. "Brother's initiator should be me." Tina's words caused Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith to turn their gazes toward her. "Oh!" Athena smiled. "So you want to steal Master from us, right?" Master? Hina's expression became interesting. So that's how it is." Mugging and Xiashur were shocked. They took a few steps back and looked at Noah in a completely different light. "So you've been playing this game for the past 3 years? You?" Even Elysian Tianzi looked at Noah with a worried expression. Do you like this kind of game? I have to say I admire your imagination. Noah's eyes twitched. Let me tell you first, I haven't done anything wrong. Also, I didn't let these children out to make you think of Pian Pian. I wanted them to protect you. Protect us. Elysian Tianzi and Mugging understood what Noah meant. Don't be fooled by their looks. As guards, there's no one more reliable than them in this world. Noah shrugged and looked at Aster and the others. Aster, Athena, you'll be in charge of protecting Elysian Tianzi. Orpheus, Lilith, you'll be in charge of protecting Mugging. Is that okay? What about Master? Aster gazed at Noah. His pair of purple eyes flickered with a mysterious luster as he spoke. Master doesn't need us anymore? She was still the same as before, able to speak so ambiguously with just one sentence. I'll go out for a while. Noah patted Aster's head. You guys stay and protect Elysian Tianzi and Mugging. Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith raised their heads and looked at Elysian Tianzi and Mugging. After a while they nodded and agreed. As for Elysian Tianzi and Mugging, they looked at Noah. Mugging said directly, Do you want to see Dr. Mugging? Yes. Noah nodded and patted Tina's shoulder. So Tina, can you be my tour guide and guard for now? An ecstatic smile appeared on Tina's face. Noah exchanged a look with Elysian Tianzi. Elysian Tianzi looked at Noah and said softly, Be careful. Noah nodded. Chapter 21:11. The scorching sun shone mercilessly in the sky, illuminating the bustling streets. Noah and Tina were walking together on a street that was bustling with pedestrians. Heh. Tina seemed to be in a very good mood. She hummed a song while holding onto Noah's hand like a little girlfriend. Her face didn't have the confusion that would appear during the day, nor did it have the coldness that would appear during the night. Instead, there was only the cheerfulness and happiness of an ordinary little girl. After coming out of the holy residence, Tina had been in this state. Noah allowed Tina, who was in high spirits, to hold his hand. Looking at Tina, who was in a very good mood, he couldn't help but smile and ask, What made you so happy? Of course it's going out with Big Brother. Tina answered without hesitation. Whenever I think of Big Brother by my side, I'm very happy. Is that so? The smile on Noah's face more or less disappeared and he sighed. But we didn't come out to play. We have serious business to do. It's okay. Tina's mood didn't lower at all and she smiled at Noah. As long as I can be with Big Brother, I don't mind going anywhere. Saying this, Tina even tightened her grip on Noah's arm, as if she wanted to increase the persuasiveness of her words. Her still childish face was filled with a happy smile. Looking at Tina like this, Noah felt a sense of apology in his heart. Undoubtedly, it was he who brought this child into fairy tale and changed this child's life without permission. However, he willfully left her and made her work hard for the career and dreams that he left behind. This made Noah feel very apologetic. Although this was for Tina's good and Tina herself was very satisfied with her current life, but looking at Tina's happy expression, Noah felt that he still owed this girl. Thinking of this, Noah began to seriously look at Tina. Compared to 3 years ago, the current Tina didn't seem to have changed much. A head of long silver hair that draped over her shoulders gently flowed. A pair of blue eyes that were as beautiful as water ripples. A childish face that was as cute as a doll. A dress that embellished the charm of a young girl. Other than being a little taller than before, Tina didn't change much. After all, the difference between a 10-year-old girl and a 13-year-old girl wasn't that big. Even if there was a saying that a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood, Tina still hadn't reached that age. In another 2 or 3 years, the changes would probably be much greater than now. However, compared to the first time they met, the current Tina was undoubtedly much brighter than before. At least that was the case when she was with Noah. Hence, at this moment, in the eyes of outsiders, Tina was an extremely cute foreign girl, and she attracted the gazes of many passers-by. That child is so cute. Yeah. And she's a foreigner, she's like a doll. I want a hug? Yeah. But why do I feel like I've seen this child somewhere before? The whispers of the passers-by were clearly heard by Noah and he cursed in his heart. Unlike before when she was only active as an assassin in the inner world, the current Tina was known to all as the ace of the fairy tale, the world's strongest initiator. Under such circumstances, Tina had also been on TV many times and must have received a lot of attention. If she was recognized here, it would be a little troublesome, wouldn't it? After all, although the Tokyo area was an ally of Fairyland, there were still many humans in this area who hated the cursed child. Who knew if there would be someone with brain damage who would suddenly run out to cause trouble? With this in mind, Noah patted Tina's hand and said softly, "Let's pick up the pace." Hearing this, Tina was slightly taken aback but immediately noticed the situation around them and nodded understandingly. However, Noah still clearly noticed the slight disappointment in Tina's eyes. Seeing this, Noah smiled helplessly and patted Tina's head. "Don't look so disappointed, we'll come out together again next time." Tina's eyes lit up and she smiled again. With Noah in tow, she quickened her pace and walked forward. Not long after, the two came to the front of a hospital. It was a hospital affiliated to a university. Under Tina's lead, Noah walked into the affiliated hospital, and the strong smell of disinfectant immediately wafted into his nose. In the hospital, many doctors in white coats and nurses in nurse uniforms saw Noah, but when they saw Tina beside Noah, their expressions immediately changed and they chose to stay away. It seemed that the doctors and nurses here had some understanding of Tina's identity. Tina seemed to have gotten used to this. She walked up to the counter and asked the lady at the counter, "I'm sorry, I'm looking for my room, doctor." "The doctor is at the usual place." It seemed like it was not the first time the receptionist had dealt with Tina, and she said directly, "Just like before, just go there." "Understood." Tina nodded, then returned to Noah's side and held Noah's hand with a smile on her face. "Big brother, come with me." Noah naturally didn't have any objections to this, and he followed Tina toward the northern staircase. Maybe it was Noah's illusion. From here on, the number of pedestrians seemed to decrease a lot. And at the end of the corridor at the stairs, there was a square cave on the ground. At first glance it looked like a trap, but upon closer inspection there was actually a steep flight of stairs inside the cave. Standing in front of the stairs, Noah only felt a strange smell faintly coming from inside, which made Noah frown slightly. Unfortunately, Noah was not unfamiliar with this strange smell, because it was the unique smell of corpses. "Tina," Noah said with a strange expression. "Is this a morgue?" "Yes." Tina also let out a bitter laugh. "Doctors usually live in the morgue." Noah's mouth twitched. The world's most powerful brain lives in a morgue? What kind of hobby is this? With this thought in mind, Noah followed Tina down the stairs and entered an underground tunnel that had a bit of a haunted house atmosphere. And at the end of the tunnel, there was a door carved with an exaggerated demon statue. Looking at this door, Noah began to confirm that this was definitely a strange person. Only Tina, with a look of indifference, pushed open the door and walked in. What appeared in front of them was a dark but surprisingly spacious room. There was an operating table, a desk, sophisticated instruments, a blackboard full of formulas, and so on in the room. It did not feel like a morgue, but more like an operating room or a research institute. Noah could even see that there was a corpse that had been embalmed lying on the operating table here. And there were also culture tanks filled with the corpses of primitive animals, which made his hair stand on end. If someone said that this was hell, there would definitely be people who would be willing to believe it, right? Noah could not help but say, "Would anyone really be willing to live here? I don't think so." Tina's tone was full of uncertainty. "But the doctor is a very strange person." In other words, the doctor really liked to live in a place like this. Noah was speechless. As the saying went, there was only a fine line between a genius and a lunatic, and a smart person often meant that they were also strange people. One of the strongest minds in the world was definitely an out-and-out weirdo. "That's strange, is the doctor not here?" Tina began to look around as she walked in. "Doctor, are you here?" Noah followed behind Tina as she called out to him. His gaze swept over the culture tanks that contained the carcasses of the primitive intestinal animals. Slap! Suddenly a hand grabbed Noah's foot. A sense of horror immediately rushed from Noah's feet to his spine. Noah turned around abruptly, lowered his head, and looked under himself. As a result, a face covered by long bangs was imprinted in Noah's eyes. Just as Noah was about to throw a punch, the face spoke. "Is there anything to eat?" Noah almost broke down. Chapter 21:12. In the dim morgue, a woman in a white coat was sitting in front of an office desk. She was desperately eating the white rice in the lunchbox in front of her, covering her entire face with rice grains. Noah and Tina sat side by side in front of each other, and both of them fell into a state of speechlessness at the sight of each of them gorging themselves like hungry ghosts. Especially Noah. Not only was he speechless, but he also had an indescribable feeling in his heart. The woman in front of him was eating and drinking like a starving ghost. If one only looked at her appearance, she was simply sloppy to the extreme. His skin had a sickly pallor. Her bangs were messy and long, covering half of her eyes. Undoubtedly, she had a pretty face. However, her eye sockets were slightly sunken.